So we'll be unpacking that all. We'll have a full global threat analysis where we'll dig into the headlines and see what other news organisations are saying about it. And like I say, we'll then be getting into our SHTF scenario show, which looks like this. And we're going to be getting into the main feature of the show, which is going to be the grid down scenario. And there's quite a few slides. I forget how many, but grid down scenario, a disaster timeline, and we'll be going through day by day what happens and why it's a problem now more than it was forever. So we'll be going through this entire presentation for you as part of the grid down scenario, SHTF scenarios series that I do. So please join me for that. It's going to be a great. I mean, I haven't done this show literally for 3 years, so it's going to be really interesting to go back to it. So please look out for that coming up straight after. We're going to be getting into a global threat analysis report so we can cover all what's going on live and tell you what's going on, where it's going on, and what I think's going on. Right, I hope your seatbelts are securely fastened. Global Threat Analysis, we hosted Drew on the Sig Prepper channel, you know how we do. Thank you to everyone. First and foremost though, before we get stuck in, obviously thoughts and prayers to anyone undergoing stress, distress or any discomfort right now in Portugal and Spain where these power outages are. Love, peace and progress to the pack, everyone. Cheers. Thank you for joining me. Please share this on your social media as well. Really appreciate you getting the word out, because it's going to be an important show, particularly what we've got coming up next. So please share this on your social media. Right about now. Love to you all. Feel free to lean forward and hit the like button as well if you feel like it's justified just yet. If it's not, just hold off and wait until it is. So we're just going to look at the mainstream quickly to see what they're saying about it. Power outage causes chaos in Spain and Portugal. So this is the BBC World. Massive power cut hit large parts of Spain and Portugal on Monday, causing widespread chaos and disruption. Remember, I said to you yesterday, we have to wait till Monday because I've got a feeling it's going to be a busy one for the news. But don't forget, they always wait until Monday. Well, here we are. So the outage left millions of people without electricity, while internet and phone networks were also down. Trains were cancelled and evacuated in some regions, and traffic lights stopped working as delays. Do you know, this is almost like my entire grid down scenario that I did 2 years ago, describing, which we will be doing tonight with my slideshow presentation for it. It is a podcast on my channel anyway, from way back. But it seems apt to do this now. And it's interesting seeing these things kicking off in the same order. So with shops, homes and restaurants plunged into darkness and some people stuck in lifts, Spain's electricity network said by mid-afternoon that restoring power could take several hours, if not days. I've seen in other places. Spain's political leaders said the cause of the disruption was still unknown. But there was no indication of solar attack. But do you know what? They started going on about this atmospheric anomaly, which is interesting. And it's not an atmospheric anomaly, and I can tell you for a few reasons, which I'll explain in a minute. So where did the outage begin? So the first reports on outage began around midday, so 10 o'clock GMT, which for me is a little bit like, I don't even know, 8 hours ago or something. 10 hours ago. And its impact quickly escalated. As the scale of the disruption became clear, residents of Madrid were warned to stay put, keep off the roads, and not to call emergency services unless truly urgent. So yeah, Spanish operators saying the power restoration would take up to 10 hours, while Portugal's power firm REN said getting back to full power could take up to a week. So what we're going to be looking at tonight in my presentation for the grid down scenario goes through to 2 weeks where it gets proper purge style-y, right? So we're going to see how desperate this could get. Now, my show is based on the entire nationwide grid down scenario as an extreme version. But you'll see how similar it is and how you can prepare against it. More importantly, that's what we're all about here at Sigma Prepper Channel, is giving you solutions that are thought through, strategic and intelligent, that anyone can do, no matter who you are, single lone woman with a family of 5, or you know, a dude on his own in his penthouse suite, right? Doesn't matter who you are as your Sigma. So the authorities in Spain and Portugal are still trying to work out what caused the power cuts. There are no indications of any cyber attack at this point, the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, said. As panic spread earlier in the day, key word there, panic, residents, this is why we do what we do, so there is no panic and there is no fear, right? False evidence appearing real, don't forget, is what fear stands for. False evidence appearing real. So the first thing is to not let your fear instincts kick in. You got to grab hold of that, yeah? Get into flow, yeah? When you're in the flow state, it means you're not being driven by your survival instincts of freeze, fight, flight, fawn. Instead, you're in the flow, yeah? Where you can strategically, intelligently, and clearly think through strategies and deploy and employ things like freeze, fight, fawn, and so on, given the right moment at the right time. Whereas most people, how they roll is they're just literally knee-jerk, oh, they always basically fight, they always just fight, and that's going to get into trouble in an SHGF scenario, right? Equally, if you're always fawning and you're always just giving in, you're always just being nice and just giving stuff away and just, you know, you're going to come unstuck. So you need to be able to use each of these things strategically in a crisis, right? So this panic thing, don't let that be us, yeah? Follow this channel so that it's not you, right? I know my wolf pack, the last thing they're going to be doing in a crisis and a power cut is power outage, and a grid down scenario is going to be panicking. Stay to the end of the show and that'll be you too. So panic spread earlier in the day. Residents of Madrid were warned to stay off the roads. So what has been the impact? Well, I'll tell you what, rather than that, I think what we'll do is we'll have a little look, see through live, because they don't seem to be saying here what they reckon it is on the mainstream just yet. They seem to be holding off on that. Now, in terms of anomalies, right? I mean, we usually talk about solar flares and quakes anyway here, so let's do that. So over on solarham.com, you'll see here, this gives you a complete rundown of the sun. Now, the reason it's called Solar Ham is because this is for ham radio users, of which many preppers and survivalists are keen ham radio users, and, you know, atmospheric conditions, as they say, right, as they're talking about, to be responsible for this power outage in Spain and Portugal and France and other places that it seems to be potentially spreading to, which we'll get into. But just so we can lay this to rest, there are no atmospheric anomalies. The reason why this solar ham does it is because if you have atmospheric anomalies, it means that you have attenuation in the ionosphere, which is where you're using the ham radio signal to basically bounce off it. So if you start getting serious noise, if you like, yeah, in the upper ionospheric layer, then that's where you end up getting big drop-offs of your ham radio signal and attenuation SNR, signal to noise ratios and things, right? So what this website shows largely is what the sun's up to and what effect that's having on our planet, and therefore what effect that's having on our communications, particularly ham radio. So those sorts of things that could affect a power grid are very similar frequencies. They're quite low frequencies because you're going down to about 144 megahertz and lower when we're talking about the aurora forecasting. And so there's no auroras coming in, meaning there's no electromagnetic interference going on with the sun's coronal mass ejections or nothing. There's nothing going on like that. If you look, this graph here shows you exactly what's going on with the sun or not, and you can see there's been nothing even bubbling, despite it has been pretty littered with solar flares yeah, but none of them are active. There's no magnetic mixing. They're all alpha or beta individually, A, B, B, B here in this green. So I'm just saying it's not the sun, right? It's not a solar flare. It's not anything like that. And I can tell you as well, just from personal experience, and I don't want to have to mention this, but it seems really sort of valid, but there's a project that I've been building, which is another survival gear product that I'll be launching. I don't know if it will be this year. I'm hoping it will be, but I've been working on it for some time. And there's a unique method that I've used to detect things like atmospheric anomalies by several 100,000 lines of custom code I've written that essentially, I don't want to use the word because I don't like it, but hacking one of the leading GPS antennas, I've managed to unlock it to be able to access literally hundreds of satellites that are flying around above. And I've created an algorithm that essentially can measure the signal to noise ratios of all these satellites and detect anomalies. And all I want to say is there haven't been any today. Now, bear in mind, in terms of geographical location, you know, within Europe, whatever there would be going on there, something would be happening. There isn't. So all I can tell you from my experience as a prototype and engineer, an electronic engineer, and somebody who's built systems to detect this stuff, I can tell you now that sitting on my desk right now in prototype format, in breadboard, but working with an antenna on my roof on my lab, I've got a customized antenna on my roof of my lab, which is plugged in, right? So I just want to say, I can attest personally to the data that I've got access to from my own prototype, right? There are no atmospheric anomalies. And as I've just shown you as well, with things that aren't quite so intellectual property protected, for me to show things like SolarHam, yeah, as you can see, and I hope you can see, and I've proved there are no anomalies going on. And in fact, this Space Weather Prediction Center will give you the rundown at the top there. You see it's all green, lich, right? The Enlil spiral will show you as well, anything coming in, nothing to worry about. It's all in terms of plasma density or the radial velocity. There's nothing even above 700 kilometers a second. That's 700 kilometers a second, by the way, not hour. That's not a mistake. So this is what we're looking for here, right? So this is the attenuation I was talking about. So this is the amount of RF energy that's being absorbed into our ionospheric layer, which again, as I say, is kind of what we're using as ham radio communications around the world. And it also acts as a really good way to detect incoming anomalies, right? And as you can see here, look, 0. Even on a normal day, you'd have something going on here. So this is like properly. And if we... Look, if I scan through the timeline up until now, nothing. Look at Debbie serving in the house. Hugo Biscuits, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Debbie. You are our primary, Debbie Sermon, primary sponsor of the show today. Oh, bear in mind, I've also done as usual. I've turned the ads off for you, so there might be one when you first arrive, but there's no mid-roll ads going on while we're live. So whatever YouTube does to the ads afterwards, if you're watching this tomorrow, sorry about your luck. But I always turn these ads off while we're live so we don't miss anything because we are live. And just because you get an ad doesn't mean it pauses it for me. I just keep going. And because we've got things like a big presentation coming up with the grid down scenario, how to survive it, the grid down timeline of a power outage, it's important that there's no interruption. So thank you to Debbie. You've allowed ads to be turned off and kept off, so really appreciate it. And anyone else who wants to show their appreciation, much appreciated. So this is what we're looking at then. This is, like I say, nothing going on. I hope I've proved my point. But so that's the first thing. We can get that out of the way, right? Now, most of the live information is coming in from various places, but I mean, X is just as good a place as any other. And as I say, when we look at things like trains being stranded and people just dotting about, and it's a pretty hot and sunny day today, as you can see. So don't forget, no air conditioned units. So living in Mediterranean areas like south of Spain, Portugal, super hot. Even today's been super hot. I've been writing another chapter today of my book upcoming, which I can't even tell you what it is, but it's going to be within 7 days. I can't tell anyone what anything is at the moment. There's so many people trying to copy everything I do. It's just embarrassing, but flattering at the same time, obviously. But so I'm really sorry I can't just tell you all the stuff that I'm building and working on and what's going to be released because, you know how it is, right? So I've got an awesome thing coming out and I've been writing that in the garden today. And then obviously with the Madrid, Portugal power outage happening, with what I had already planned this evening, I thought, let's get that rocking right now. And I was going to schedule it about 4 hours ago and I was just all over the place. So I do apologize, but here we go. Let's see what else we got rocking. Now, what we need to do, what I usually do is if you go on to latest, yeah, and if we find, you like typically what, Portugal and Spain trending, right? So if you can go here, and then usually what I'll do is if you find some, this is just so you can go about it your way. So you see like power outage hashtag, right? And then we can do min underscore fave. Oh, did they change it recently? No. So we can do latest. Oh. Maybe it's been fav. Do you know, they changed this when X became X. Give me 5 seconds. Let's see what the syntax is now. Yeah, it is min faves, so why isn't it working? I do apologise. This is so annoying that I don't know why they felt the need to change how the syntax is. I don't know if you're even familiar with that, but you can do min faves. But then they changed it when Elon Musk took over. No, I think we're good. I think we're good. So what you do is latest, and it will put it in chronological order, and it won't show you anything that hasn't got more than 15 favorites, right? So you tend to get more current and stuff that's trending, just so you know, right? So you can see it here. So I've done the hashtag power outage min underscore faves colon 15. You change that variable 15 to 30. But these are nice tricks for you to know. For when you're doing your own research or analysis, it's a much easier way to make sure you're dealing with current content and so on, right? So check it out. This is the thing, man. Everything shuts down, right? This is like mobile networks, no calling anyone. Airports are blocked, train stations, no one's getting to where they need to go. Like I said, no air conditioning, right? No mobile phone signal. Very, very few cell towers have got battery backup, and if they have, it's reserved for emergency calls only, which means no text messages. It means no, it's like emergency. There's no data, no 4G, 5G, none of that. Yeah. The cascade effect is amazing. A lot of people showing that train. Oh man, look, people walking up subway tracks. Yeah. This is again Spain and Portugal, France and Europe as a whole, major power outages. At this time, no cause has been identified and no timetable for power restoration has been established. So this is still off. There's been no word of it being turned back on yet. So break-in mass traffic jams in Spain due to massive Western Europe's power outage that affected multiple nations. Spain, Portugal, France. Cause is unknown for now. Well, I've told you what I definitely know it's not. To be honest, my system that I've built, right, even if it was a somewhat localized EMP, it would still be shown on my data that's being logged from this all the time. Yeah. And it's not. So if anything, it's going to be an infrastructural thing, right? This is going to be typically the same as it was in the Heathrow airport, where they're doing all this, you know, climate change initiatives with zero carbon energy attempts. I'm not going to call them efforts, even attempts, which are just failing the country's needs, right? And when you've got populations exploding in countries where their infrastructure is imploding, you just end up with the obvious, you know, cause and effect, basically. This is what's going on. This is funny. Well, it's not funny at all, but this is interesting and ironic because, again, in my presentation you'll be seeing in a few minutes, which is something I put together professionally many years ago and then did for Sigma Prepper in 2022, is also an entire chapter in my Ultimate Guide to Prepping book. And also I'll be giving that presentation to you as well straight after this. But it's just these things that are listed in there, seeing them roll out in real time. Everyone who's followed this channel long enough already knows how this plays out, right? So worst of all, at a holiday destination like Benidorm, Mark says bars are unable to serve drinks because of a lack of power to their pumps. If you haven't got a drink, you're out of luck, he says. Priorities, innit? So Madrid in chaos. Massive power outage on April the 28th, 2025. Cripples city. Traffic lights dead. Gridlock paralyses streets. ATMs and banks suspended. Water and internet disrupted. Metro halted. Blackout hits Spain, Portugal, France. Man, this is like... These are all the things you're going to see in a minute that have been in my entire grid down scenario, which is there's a certain order of events. And if you understand how things play out, you can understand how you can prepare against the most likely 3-day or 1-day outage versus all the way through to 2 weeks, a month, all the way through to be completely independent, off-grid, and so on, right? So with Starlink connections, so you're not even on grid with data. There are options out there, right? And you can get a PoE, power over Ethernet converter for a Starlink satellite, so that you can run that from 12 volt, in case you didn't know, from the car, or from your off-grid power system. So all these things are possible, and of course, if you know how these things play out in the order that they play out in, then you can prepare accordingly. As these people clearly haven't, who are scrambling and panicking and full of fear, which is not how we roll at all. We're just on the flow the entire time, us Sigmas. Yeah, us Wolfpack Sigmas, this is how we do. Yeah. You should already have your stuff. The whole point is you don't go anywhere. You don't need to go anywhere. You've already got everything you need. You don't need to be getting into the gnarliness of what Guam out there in the big stores, because people are just get leery. Yeah. I've told people before about the experience living in Thailand, right? We lived on a tiny little island that was like 11, 12 miles at its biggest diameter in the middle of Thailand, in the middle of the ocean. And it's like, we had an epic storm come in, wipe out the entire power system on the entire island for like weeks. Yeah, believe me, I know how it pans out. And it's, that was living in a country where that's happening all the time. This is where you become automatically a prepper and a survivalist, because you're living in a country that isn't like the West, that takes for granted you turn the faucet and water comes out, or you turn the socket and AC outlet and power comes out. It's not like that in other places. And when you're used to living in that environment, you're used to just having things that supplement, that mitigate, that backups, that help you get through things. UPS, uninterruptible power supplies, that you have your computers thing in. I had such a massively modified one. I could run my stuff for quite a while. But anyway, so life is different in different places. And so my experience there was, I had the proper heads up from the mainland from a good friend of mine who was the chief of tourist police on the island. And I thought I had the proper, couple of hours warning about this major tropical storm coming in. I went down to their version of Walmart, yeah, Tesco Lotus, right? But their version of Walmart. And I couldn't believe it. It was cleared out already. However cool I thought I was having a best mate who was a chief of tourist police, right, who gave me the heads up from his uncle on the mainland that shit was going to hit the fan. It was already, yeah. And people fighting over batteries, yeah. People literally fighting over batteries off the shelves, yeah. And a woman just took this thing of batteries out of this dude's trolley, and he's like, oh, yay, like this, and it's like, oh man, it's kicking off. So when you see how it pans out, it's just not pretty. People aren't pretty when they get panicked, and that's in Thailand, where people are super civilized, right? In Europe, there's a lot of Portugal. I don't know if you know, but Portugal's had some real big problems recently with their social fabric, let's just say, without going any further into that. So if you haven't been following that, then this is causing massive problems with cohesion. Social cohesion is being torn at the seams already. And so now when you get a crisis like this, it's so important that people work together and aren't fighting over things like batteries in the store. That's all I'll say on that, right? Like there's certain cultures that are pretty good at queuing, and there's other cultures that aren't very good at queuing. There's plenty of memes about that, right? So I think what we're going to do, I've got this grid down scenario we're going to do. So we're going to follow through exactly what happens hour by hour for the first bit, plus day by day up to 2 weeks. So we'll look at what could be the case for Spain, France or Portugal in what's going on here. This could also not even be over yet. This could be something else. We don't even know what it is yet. It could be some black swan event. Who knows? But don't go anywhere, because we're going to be coming with the show that we've got lined up for you, which is the grid down scenario, prepping for SHTF. This is the entire timeline of how it pans out. We've got that coming up. So let's jump out of here then, I think. And what we'll do is we'll get back to base camp and we'll get straight into grid down scenario after that. Don't miss it. Do you know what I would say? This is usually where we say you can unbuckle your seatbelts, but I think we better keep them buckled firmly still in. Cheers, everyone. Love, peace, and progress to the pack. My tea is getting a bit low. So we're going to be getting into the grid down scenario show. We'll be looking at how that timeline pans out and see what's going to happen day by day, how you can prepare yourself in the event of a grid down scenario or a power outage where you are. I've lived, me and Magic Hand, who's in the live chat right now, just seen. Lovely to see you, my darling. Thank you for my tea. We've lived through so many power cuts, it's not even funny. It becomes a way of life, and you come back to the West after decades of living in foreign countries like that, in the Middle East for 3-4 years, and places like that. And everyone seems so reliant, right? Is the word I'll choose. So reliant and dependent, and I don't want to say ignorant, but kind of to just how lucky they are with the reliability, and in other countries where they have to learn to do without, out of the blue for no apparent reason sometimes, and just the power goes out. Sorry about your luck, you've got to deal with it, right? And you find ways to deal with it, and you employ them in your everyday life. So when you've lived a life like that, putting a show together like this, as you can imagine, pretty straightforward. So let's get straight into it then. I was tempted to go into a tea break first before we get straight into the big one. Let me know if you want to be doing tea break first for those who've been here since the start. Let's give a shout out to loads in the chat. Dan Brooker, great to see you from the Midlands. I'm assuming everyone's power is okay who's with us now. So great to see you. Thank you. Please do share this video on your social media, because this is an epic show coming up with the presentation, taking you through the timeline of a grid down scenario, how you should prepare, and so many other things that we're going to be getting into. So I think we'll just get straight into it. I'm cool with that if you are, and we'll see what people think as we go. So SHTF scenario, let's do it. Right, let's pop that down and jump in here. Bambi's Secret, wow, that's a name I ain't seen for ages. Good to see you, girlfriend. Hope you're well, and welcome to the live chat. So here we go then. This is my grid down scenario for power outages and ting. This is also a chapter in my book, The Ultimate Guide to Prepping by Secret Prepper, which is a humongous monster of information, and an entire chapter which I'll be referring to as well during this live presentation. I will be referring to the Ultimate Prepping Guide. Let me just so you know what it looks like. This is what it looks like. So this is Secret Prepper, the Ultimate Prepping Guide. This is version 3.6. I'll be releasing this version within the next couple of months, I think. But this is like 350 pages or something. But we'll be referring to it during the show because, like I say, there's an entire chapter in here which is dedicated to this whole thing, which is who turned out the lights. So this simulates a grid down scenario, exactly as we're going to do in this presentation. But this chapter in my book basically covers it all, exactly as we're going to do today. There's a little bit more detail in here, which we'll refer to as we go through, bringing it up to date for 2025. There's also what's your immediate action, what should you do straight away in the event of a grid down scenario. So there's lots to get through. Please, like I say, do share this with your on your social medias, please, and hit the like button, because you know what YouTube's like, not letting anyone stay subscribed more than 5 minutes on this channel. Love, peace, and progress to the pack. Thank you, everyone, for being with me. Yeah. Right. Let's get into it then, shall we? So, grid down scenario, disaster timeline. Obviously, those that are new to Secret Prepper, we're all about a more strategic approach to prepping and survival. This isn't about stockpiling. This is about intelligence, preparedness, right? Thinking stuff through. And this is exactly what we're doing now with our grid down scenario disaster timeline, because by analysing sort of what actually happens and what fails and what the implications and what the cascade effects of those failures are, once you understand that clearly, you can use your own you can use your own logic really to just sort of say, well, okay, but if I get a few things like that, and if I make sure I've got this on hand and I'll make sure I've got that, we know we're good for an n number of days, right? So why do we need to prepare in the first place? I mean, obviously, we've just seen with Spain and Portugal and France, and they haven't got their stuff back up and running yet, don't forget. This is ongoing live now. This is still happening to them, right? Now, what's a bigger problem for us in 2025 is our reliance is in such an all-time low. We've got things like our ancestors knew how to survive on their own. They were all Sigma type personalities, to be honest, because they had to be self-sufficient, they had to be independent, they had to concentrate on self-development and making sure you were building your skills all the time, because there was no one else going to do anything for you back then. So everyone knew how to get chickens to lay eggs. Everyone knew what to plant in what season and when. No one's got those kind of skills anymore. And so we're so reliant. This is what actually makes us really, really vulnerable as a species right now in the Western Hemisphere, certainly. The Global South have had a few, they're still pretty cool at getting on with minimal stuff. Like I say, our experience of living in the Middle East and Thailand, classic example. Visited places like India. Me and my wife were contestants on the Amazing Race TV show. Around the world, we traveled something like I think it was 43,000 kilometers in 47 days or something like that. 43,000 kilometers in 47 days. And when you challenge yourself like that and you see places like India and Delhi and Cambodia and like other countries like that we've been to, you do understand what I talk about in terms of this learned dependency, because they're rocking, man. Like when the grid goes down, they're like, yeah, whatever. They're just cracking on, right? That's not the case for us here in the West, yeah? Like Europe and the USA. It's a globalized, fragile supply chain, as you know. We saw this in 2020 with the JIT system breaking down there, the just-in-time system. Once things stop and transport stops and the subways are stopped and the roads are blocked, obviously, that also contributes to it. The ports shut down because the cranes can't get the containers off the ships, right? Resources stretched to the max, yeah, because you've got all emergency services trying to figure stuff out. You've got the power companies trying to do this. You've got the maintenance companies trying to replace the backup batteries because they're not working, and there's da-da-da. It's just an absolute cascade of failure. You've got also things like higher population density than we ever had before. So, and this is, again, particularly in Western countries where it's become quite an increase in population over quite a short amount of time, and so obviously the infrastructure hasn't kept up with it, neither has the supply chain. So we're already at a pretty vulnerable position in our situations here in the Western countries. I can speak for more so than many, because many countries in the Global South actually produce their own food locally, and way more than we do here in the UK. Thank you, my darling. Shout out to Magic Hand, keeping me cool. So critically, I mean, another thing, being critically reliant on tech isn't, elevators, communications, just everything. It's not even worth me listing it, right? Financial, cash, look at how limited cash usage nowadays, it's hardly anything. So poverty and crime on the rise already, so that's what you're dealing with. Proper gnarly stuff, right? So before we get right into it then, why should you learn with me? Why listen to me? Well, you can just read that if you actually care, but trust me, I know what I'm talking about, right? But anyway, And anyone in the chat who's followed me long enough should attest to that claim. But let the information speak for itself, and you decide if you feel this makes sense to you. And logically, it seems like something that you could see yourself going through where you live, because it's not something that doesn't happen. Just because I've experienced it lots of times in countries that aren't Western countries doesn't mean that there's no chance that you won't. Look at Spain, look at Portugal, look at France right now, yeah? So there's other things that can cause this that have got nothing to do with natural disasters or other things that are... Yeah, there's a whole wide range of reasons why the grid could fail, which is why it's such a significant thing for us, because we are so critically reliant on tech, because we are so dependent on the state for our needs, and because we are so dependent on the grid. How many people do you know have off-grid solar backup systems like I've got? Yeah, like 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100, depending on where you live. Yeah, if you've got solar panels on your roof and they're what's known as grid tied, as in you've got a grid tie inverter which sends energy back to the grid and you get dividends from your energy company. Don't forget your grid tie inverter, which is like the charge controller equivalent to an off-grid backup system. That requires AC to operate. So if the power goes out, your solar panels on your roof don't do anything for your property. You still won't get power. People, just so you know, because a lot of people think that they will. They go invest all this money in some big old system on their roof of their house that it's like grid tied into the grid, so they're getting paid for their energy creation because it's subsidized and all this sort of stuff by the government. And then when the power goes off, they wonder why nothing in their house works. It's like, that's why. So there's lots of reasons why we could experience a grid down scenario, not just what we don't know has happened in Spain and Portugal today with the power outages, because like I say, it could be, even though I've confirmed and proven scientifically with data that it's definitely not an atmospheric anomaly earlier in the show, we know that there are lots of things that could cause it. Widespread hardware failure. Like I say, this is what's been happening in the UK. There has been no investment in the infrastructure in the UK, particularly when it comes to energy, because they've been planning to get to net zero for so long. They just think, well, why buy energy? Why build energy plants when we're trying to tell people to use less energy? And then you come unstuck when there's sudden surges and they're like, oh, didn't think that far ahead, and then bosh, things like Heathrow Airport happen, and the amount of money that just the economy in the UK loses by that interruption in Heathrow happening for a day is like by order of magnitude more than it would have been to just, you know, secure our grid energy needs in the first place. But we're not getting to that. Societal economic collapse has often been something that's resulted in a grid down scenario. Venezuela had a significant grid down scenario as a result of economic and social collapse. Major weather disasters, we've seen things like that happen. Don't forget, was it in Texas not that many years ago? In Texas, and there was a massive ice storm and the grid went down. They couldn't handle it with the load, and not on top of that there was lots of ice build up on the power lines which pulled them down. It was an absolute disaster and people were unalived as a result of that. So we're not talking nonsense here. This is going to cost people their lives. It can be fatal, right? Especially depending what time of year it is, as well as being cold in Texas and people lost their lives because of no heating when the grid went down there for a week, if you remember that. You've got situations like now in Portugal and Spain, as I said, it's boiling hot, where you don't have air conditioning, you don't have the ability to keep people at a comfortable temperature. When you've got elderly sitting there in their elderly homes, you know, we've all got elderly family and loved ones that we care about, who, you know, they're sitting there sweltering with no way to keep themselves cool, and that can be fatal as well. So if you're elderly or very, very young as a baby, for example, it's an absolute disaster. Think about hospitals, right? We're going to get into this. So we've got things like fuel and gas shortages, which of course we've experienced here in the UK, which caused the blackout, or they did rolling blackouts to try and limit the effect on the infrastructure for long-term damage. So that's when they do rolling blackouts. Sometimes they can do a blackout under the guise. It's not a false flag, but they would basically do it as a scapegoat. They often use that technique. So for example, if they need to do something or need to switch something over, or they need to upgrade something, you can see what we've seen today sometimes as one of those things. It can actually be things like fuel and gas shortages, but they don't want to admit it. Of course, we all know there's the whole terrorist attack potential as a plausible scenario that would take a country's grid down. Cyber attacks, you know, there's always that threat there. Don't forget the Stuxnet, which was the one that America deployed on Iran. For those that don't know, the Stuxnet was a bug that, in fact, it wasn't sent via email or anything like that. It was actually a memory USB thing put on someone's computer, on the main computer, right? Thank you everyone for being here with us live in the chat. Please don't forget to share this on your social media. Super important show for people who are watching what's going down in Spain and Portugal with the outages, and of course wondering if that happened to me, how would I act, what kind of stuff would I need to get through it, and so on, right? So military EMP, electromagnetic pulse. In the event of electromagnetic pulse, you have actually 3 different stages to that. It's called L1, L2, and L3. These represent different frequencies. And there is a calculation mathematical based on the quarter wave frequency of the frequency that you expect in the spike, and therefore you can calculate the smallest gap that can pass through when it comes to building your Faraday cage. And so a military EMP, you don't have to worry about a solar flare EMP for when it comes to your electronic devices. But the solar flare is going to affect the transformers, where, you know, like your Qi chargers that you put your wireless chargers, you put your smartphones on. Same concept, right? These like, you know, Qi charger things that you just rest your phone on and they charge. There's a coil of wire in there. There's a long coil of wire, yeah, like your oven hob there. And essentially you're creating an electromagnetic wave, yeah, and eddy currents and stuff without getting too technical. But basically you're doing the same thing. And there's like a frequency go wop, 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 wop. And then when you put your phone down, there's a similar coil on that phone, which is the same resonant frequency. Like you have the tuning forks, boom, boom. And if they're the same, they'll resonate with each other, right? Same thing. When that coil and that wire is the same, you can pass energy through it. Now, what happens with a solar flare EMP is those long lines that go across your country with the big old pylons and stuff, you know, where you get the ceramic, you know, insulators and stuff, and the big old pylons and the long cables going across the fields that you see. Well, imagine they are those coils in your phone, right? You know, the coil that's going to pick up the power. And so when the sun's doing its whoop, 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 which is a very slow frequency, right? But when the sun's electromagnetic field from its coronal mass ejections coming in to the magnetosphere, it sort of arcs itself and it creates a whoop, 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 whoop. And that energy, resonant frequency, unfortunately, is virtually the same as those lines that go across the country above ground. And so that energy gets captured in those power lines. When that feeds into those big transformers, you know, the big massive power stations that are like, you never want to go near, do you know what I mean? Absolutely just implodes the thing and they just go boom. And these things take something like 2 years to make. Yeah? And if you've got no power, you ain't rebuilding massive transformers for a power station. So a solar flare is different. But a military EMP, the frequency of that is so high a frequency, is such a high energy density spike, you will need to put things in a Faraday cage to protect them. But that's not to say that a military EMP can't take down the country's grid like a solar flare can. On the contrary, a military EMP is designed to do exactly that. So I think this is why out there in the news today, if you haven't seen it, there's lots of speculation and hypothesis in terms of, oh yeah, I think it's probably a EMP attack. It's Russia. It's the Russians coming, right? And all this kind of business. Highly unlikely. That wouldn't be first strike, and it wouldn't be Portugal, and it wouldn't be Spain, because they ain't shit in the game, right? So it's pointless. So the situation report, then, what we're going to be doing for the purposes of this grid down scenario, so you can see how it plays out and how you'd prepare for it, is I take a hypothetical SHTF scenario. So, you know, like we said, the grid down scenario that we've seen happen in Spain and Portugal, and we'll see what happens however long this plays out during the week. And then from this, you'll be able to understand how you can prepare yourself where you live, in the town you are, in the property you live in, with the budget you have, right? That's the idea of this show. So what we're doing is we're looking at how, then this is based on how things have happened in the past. When I originally researched this, as well as my own experiences, I employed obviously a lot of more modern research, as well as things that happened in Western countries with power outages, right? So as a result of a power outage, a grid down scenario, you're looking at inoperable sewage systems. This is the cascade effect, right? Just so you understand what we're dealing with here and why a grid down scenario in modern day society is such a critical threat to us all, and the impact of which is so high, it's just not worth baking it into your prepping cake of preps, right? Which is what we're going to be looking at. So inoperable water systems, and again, please do share this show on your social media, because this is like your friends and family. You know, this is the time, right, to help your friends and family understand that this isn't some like conspiracy theory and it will never happen business. This is happening right now. So, you know, maybe if they see this show, maybe they'll prompt them into action to get at least the bare minimum, to see them through a few days. You'll see what it looks like after 14 days. It's like the purge. So don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to miss it. So complete cell, I mean, the inoperable water systems, don't forget the rule of threes, right? 3 minutes without air. Yeah. Not a good look. Right? 3 hours without shelter. That ain't a good look, depending where you are. Middle of the desert, middle of the Arctic. Either way, not a good look, right? So you got 3 days without water. That's it. 3 days without water. And then you got 3 weeks without food. And like in my ultimate guide to prepping book, I made up my own one as well, which is 3 months without love, right? And my justification for 3 months without love, because people like make fun of me about it, but I'm thinking, nah, I've studied psychology so many years in so many different disciplines for the roles I've had, and been super fortunate and lucky to be trained to have over the years. Psychology is so important in everything, particularly prepping, particularly how you handle yourself in a crisis, particularly how you de-escalate situations. Don't forget, we're all about intelligent, strategic preparedness strategies. This has nothing to do with like just getting tins of beans. This is actually thinking it through intelligently, logically, and being rational about what the realistic outcomes are likely to be where you are, right? This is about having foresight, not fear, right? Fear is false evidence appearing real, which is like we're looking at evidence that actually happening today, right? And yeah, there's nothing to be fearful about. If you understand how it pans out, you know how to protect yourself. Major transport disruptions, we're seeing that already. I showed you some clips. The complete cell and internet outage. I mean, wow. Look at how people get when Facebook goes down for 6 hours. Yeah? They're like losing their shit, man. They're like keyboard warriors going, where's her? Right? Kids are like throwing their iPads across the room going, when's the internet? I can't play my game. This is the problem, and I hate to say it, but this is the problem with Western society, is they're so reliant on it. When it's taken away, oh man, it's nasty, man. And few people can deal with the pain. So all trade and commerce cease. We've just seen that. I reported on it today. Major transport disruptions. People walking through underground tube stations in the dark, using their mobile phone torches as a way of lighting their way. Yeah? It's not realistic, everyone carrying their EDC bag, their everyday carry bag, yeah, to have a torch in there, a flashlight, right? Anyway, so the mission is, for this show, right, grid down scenario, disaster timeline, bit by bit, what goes down in a power outage and what you can do about it. So analyse the order of events and subsequent system failures resulting from a complete and sustained grid down scenario. We're going to consider the effects of each failure point and how it would look in your own location environment. As I said, everyone's in a different situation. I appreciate that. So we're going to tune it a little bit for you, wherever you are, whether you're in an apartment block in the city or in a nice little, cute little house cottage in the urban countryside, in the rural countryside. So what we're going to do is consider the effects of each failure point, how it would look customized to you, specific to you. So we'll bear that in mind as we go through. We're going to discover your potential vulnerabilities and key oversights while we're acting as a template to refine your blackout preparation. So this is what I'm saying about, I'm going to give you the rundown of how it pans out day by day, and then using that template as to the things that go wrong, you can start thinking through in your own life and your own needs, because things like some people are disabled, they're going to have different needs to those that are physically fit but have 10 children, right? So you need to adjust what I'm going to tell you here accordingly. So the objectives then, gain better understanding of the number and seriousness of threats associated with the complete grid down scenario. That's the key point here. Help to guide your blackout preparations more effectively based on newly discovered threats. So rather than going off and spending money on stuff you don't need, it's about being more efficient, more effective, more sniper approach in the way that you invest in your preparations. So you're not spending $1 million trying to protect against UFO invasions, but spending nothing on something like a grid down scenario that could happen tomorrow, right? So not to suggest that UFO invasion would never happen. That's not a topic that we're going to be talking about. But so ensure we're going to get the most survival juice for our prepping squeeze. You know how we do. So unique considerations then, like I say, everyone's climate's different. I'll give you an example. If you're in the Arctic or you're in a desert, you're going to have similar problems with not having energy, whether it's the air conditioning, whether it's heating, wood, fires, whatever it might be where you are. Local laws and restrictions, of course, in the UK, when things start getting gnarly, people start talking about ways to defend themselves. Some countries have far more options than others. Local laws and restrictions will determine how you can, what things you can buy, what things are available for you to purchase and trade, as well as how legally you're able to use those things. So bear that in mind, and check out what your restrictions are where you are. But local culture, crime levels are going to have a big effect on you. So of course, when it comes to looking at things like security, defenses, if you're in the city and it's super fucking gnarly, then believe me, you're going to want to be putting a little bit more of your budget towards the security and defenses part of your preparations for this kind of scenario. You'll see why by the time we get to about 5 days in, why that's a thing, right? So you need to flow that into the equation. Rural off-grid cabin versus city apartment is an obvious, you know, it's a very diverse situation, so position yourself where you see yourself in there and then scale accordingly, right? Property size, garden, available space. It's all very well talking about having water butts filled with water in your garden, but of course, if you don't have space or you don't have a garden or a backyard, then that's not really going to be something that's going to be worth much to you. So, you know, again, we're going to be basing that on everyone's different. Family size, dependents, pets. This is really, I think, what makes our wolf pack here at Sigma Prepper channel such a special bunch, because we're made up of so many different people, although we all tend to be that Sigma personality where we're very independent, all about self-development, skills building, and self-reliance is what makes unlike an alpha type who just wants to rule everyone, and unlike a beta who just needs to be ruled, you know, and then you got your deltas and your gammas. But yeah, this is basically us being independent in our own specific custom way that's custom to our own lives, disabilities, budget, and so on, right? So here we go then. It starts. Critical alert. What? So I set this in my original presentation I did many years ago and then redid it for this channel in 2022, right? I tend to always have it as 8:42, obviously 42 the answer to everything and all that number, right? And it had to be in the morning because I wanted it to be where people are on the way to work, just got to work, because that's kind of like worst case scenario, which is what we like looking at. And then we can bust down where you would be, how you'd get home, you know, where your kids would be, where you would be, where your husband would be, or your wife, and so on, right? So this is what I'm saying. Where are you? Who are you with? And what do you do? So this is Monday morning, Portugal, Spain, France. Yeah, this is what we're chatting about. Welcome everybody live in the chat. It looks like YouTube's doing everything it can to throttle this channel and keep it under 50. So thank you for everyone's patience with what the way they're bumping people off. But thank you everyone. Please do share this channel with your friends and family in this video particularly, because super important stuff of what's going on today. Not 1818. I keep seeing that, do you? Do you see the twos are always my number? I see 22, 222 all the time. But again, there's a manifestation element to that, you know, a little bit like when you're looking to buy a car and then you go and test drive a car you really like the look of, and you never really noticed them before. And now you're driving around after test driving that car. It's like you see those cars everywhere. That's manifestation in its basic form, right? So, not sure I'm full Sigma, most definitely not Alpha nor Beta. Yeah, you don't want to be Gamma or Delta. I'm going to do a show breaking it all down for you anyway, and the psychology of it, and more than that, I'm not even going to tell you. Again, I've got to be careful. Every time I tell people what I'm planning to do and all my innovative stuff, it just ends up people try and copy it all the time. This isn't... Anyway, I'll do it. You'll know when I'm doing it because you'll be there with me live, and then I'll release it to everyone, right? So a summer without air conditioning will be quite arduous. Yeah, again, depending on where you lived. I mean, we lived in Cyprus for many, many years. Near Israel, a stone's throw away, literally. There's Israel, right? So me and my missus, our son was born there as well. You're talking like 50 degrees centigrade, 120 Fahrenheit consistently. Do you know, in 3 years there, I think it rained twice. No messing about. Twice it rained in 3 years living in Cyprus. It was that bad that they were having to ship water from Greece. Ship fresh water from Greece to Cyprus. And we had a water ban where the municipality would turn the water off for like 3 days a week, and you'd get the water for maybe 3 days a week. Sorry, it would turn off for 4 days a week, you'd get the water for 3 days a week. Stuff like that. That went on for 18 months, we lived through that. Anyway, so grid down scenario, 8:42 a.m. Right? I don't know if it'd sound like that. It'd probably be more like a puff or a boom, right? But either way, 8:42 in the morning, you've got to imagine where you are. This is all about getting into the mindset of a crisis. If you can do that, yeah, I don't expect everyone to be hyperphantasic or have hyperphantasia, i.e. you can close your eyes and visualize anything you want in 3D, rotate it around in full quality, in any color, whatever you want. That's hyperphantasia. But I'm just saying, I don't expect everyone to have that. But at the very least, if you can just try and think through in your life, in your town, in your house, this happening, it's very useful as a tool to do that, and help you to think through step by step. Where would I be? Where would the kids be? Would they be at school? How would I get the kids back home again? And so on, right? So this is what we need to be thinking about in your life, in your environment, with your family and your needs. So yeah, where are you, who are you with, and what you do? So day number 1, then the beginning. Traffic lights. These are the things that are going to basically be bosh, right? So traffic lights. Trains are stuck. We just saw that today. Obviously, I showed you that on X. Reports of trains getting stuck and people walking through tube stations, undergrounds. Elevators and rides. Yeah, imagine that if you're on a fairground ride at the top and the power goes out, right? Sorry about your luck. Sitting upside down in a fairground ride. I couldn't think of anything worse. So you got fuel and gas goes offline. This is the problem with obviously transport, right? Because trying to use your car to go anywhere, it's not just if you run out of gas in the tank, you can't guarantee. Well, you can't guarantee. There is no way of filling your tank up. Don't forget, gas pumps and petrol pumps use electricity with the pumps in them, right? It's not some gravity-fed system. There's like massive tanks underground under the forecourt in a garage. So you've got electric pumps and the meter and the thing and the hose, right? You need electricity to run that. So you can't fill your car up, right? Evening, Mark. Hope you're all right, my man. Hope you're all right. Mark's getting impatient. Look, just get to the point, dude. Just get to the point, he says. Yeah? All right. Calm down. Yeah? God, dear. So, you know, this is what I'm dealing with here, Mark. Come on. So anyway, for those that are following, refrigeration and lighting, big thing, man, right? There's some things that you can do on day 1 straight away, which I'm going to take you through, right? Which will protect you from a lot of things. So things like meat and medicine spoiling, right? Typically in most of the countries that I've lived in where there's been power cuts, one of the first concerns is things like the meat spoiling and the freezers defrosting. And it's really interesting because it's about day 3, day 2, where you start smelling barbecue quite a lot, because people, at least, even though they don't have microwaves or electric ovens running, they've got some barbecue coals in the garage. So they get the barbecue coals out and they start basically cooking all the meat they got in the freezer and just dishing it out to all the neighbours. That's a very common thing, by the way, just so you know. So yeah, JIT system stops, and of course, as I mentioned briefly earlier, the just-in-time system, which we saw how that affected us in 2020, right? When that all kicked off, this was something that I had a different prepping channel back then called something else, and I actually released the pandemic preparedness pack in 2020, and that went viral. It was great that everybody got to have that with a full list of everything you needed, because it was nothing more than foreseeing this JIT system stopping, right? So the just-in-time system is where you don't have warehouses or stock rooms out the back of Walmart anymore. It's literally, as something's bought in the store, boop, 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 it goes on a list of stuff that's being ordered real time from the warehouse distribution center that arrives on the truck the next day. With all of that stuff that was bought today will arrive on the lorry tomorrow, because there's no room. It's just not an efficient use of funds or storage space or square foot area that a corporation has to pay for to have storage space when you don't need it. Instead, you just get it in when you need it, just in time, whether that's services or whether that's products, right? So this just-in-time system, we saw how vulnerable it was in 2020. And I saw how vulnerable it was going to be, which is why loads of people were following me back then. There's plenty of them in the chat right now. But those people that were following me back in 2020, none of them ran out of anything. Everyone had everything they needed. It was all predictable, just like it is with something like this, right? So the store essentials low already because people go whoomp straight into the stores, right? So the question is, what should you do first? Now, there are some key things that if you do some things early on, you can really save yourself some you know what, right? So by following a few simple steps immediately after the lights go out, you can protect your household equipment and increase your survivability. So turn off complete fuse box, individual breakers. Now I'm going to explain this with my my Sigma Prepper Ultimate Guide to Preparedness, Ultimate Guide to Prepping. So this is my book version of this presentation I'm doing for you, right? So this is the Critical Alert 8:42 AM. Now in here, I've laid it out similarly, but it's this is probably better to run by, to be honest. So example SHTF scenario then. So day one, the beginning. So this is what's your immediate action, right? Immediately after the power goes out, assuming you're at home, follow these steps to protect your household equipment and increase your survivability. So first things first is turn off the fuse box. Why? Well, if it's something like a power cut or it's a solar flare, induced currents which are going to be taken down the grid, what you'll often find is that the government's going to turn the power off preemptively. Or not the government, but yeah, the governing body of the energy grid is going to be saying, let's shut it down to protect it if they know something's coming in. So turning off the fuse box is one of two things. First of all, when the power comes back on, it can often come back on with a big surge, which can wipe out all your stuff. Second of all, if it's a preemptive turn off of the grid to protect it from an incoming solar flare, which we would have about 2 days warning if it was, so they would know, then it means that again, by disconnecting and turning off the fuse box, you can, So anyway, unplug all but one AC devices. This is useful. I do this quite a lot back in the day when I was living in Thailand and places where we get power cuts all the time. Because what you can do is if you just take everything out, because we don't want that power surge when it comes back on to take out your TV, take out your computer systems. So you turn off the main fuse box for everything first, right? To stop any surges killing your stuff when the power goes out. And then you pull out all the main stuff that you don't want to get surged and busted, right? Out of the wall, because it's off anyway, right? Because you've got a power outage. And then all you need to have in there is just one cheap little lamp in an AC outlet, right? And then you'll know when the power comes on then, without everything going boom, right, and frying when it comes back on. And I tell you this from past experience of living in countries where power cuts are frequent, right? So the surge when it comes back on, or if the power company has turned the power off preemptively because there's an incoming solar flare, electromagnetic pulse that's going to be overloading the systems, then again, turn it off. So conserve your mobile battery. This is super critical with modern day, the way people rely on their phones. Remember, I always said about how like less than 7% American population, most of my viewers are American, but 7% of the American population have a flashlight on hand, right? And when surveyed, and that's specific, a flashlight, not your mobile phone light, right? Everyone surveyed were just like, oh, I've got my mobile phone, I've got my cell phone light. You see? No one seems to have, not no one, but 83% of people though. So conserve your mobile battery power, put mobile devices into airplane mode. Now don't forget, the first thing that's going to happen when the grid goes down is your cell service is probably going to go anyway. Don't forget, very limited number of those cell towers actually have battery backup. And those that do, it's reserved for critical services like 911, 999 calls, that's cell calls, and data is suspended, and some low-level critical text messaging services. That is it, right? So when your cell towers near you lose their main power coming in, they switch it, even if they have battery backup, which I think, was it, I think it was Biden. There was a report that came out when he was in power, and it was just awful. It was something like less than 5% of cell towers have any battery backup, and the ones that do are not legislated to have any more than 12 hours. So if your cell towers happen to have more than 12 hours worth of battery backup in it, they're doing you a favor, because it's not a normal thing. I was amazed when I learned that statistic. Anyway, so mobile phone, assume it's not going to work. Now the problem is when the cell tower turns off, for those that don't know this, right, it's worth knowing. When a cell tower turns off, what happens is inside your smartphone, it's smart, right, in many ways, as well as being smart with its energy usage. So when it knows it's near a cell tower, because it's got a strong signal from a cell tower, it will actually limit its transmission power to the cell tower to conserve power. Why do you need to transmit full power when the cell tower's just down the road, right? And of course, if you're like in a boat or something just off the shore and you're like a few miles or kilometers from the nearest cell tower, your phone's going to be using far more energy to transmit there. And so therefore your phone will run out of battery faster. Now the problem is that when your mobile phone cannot find a cell tower, it's even worse. And I know, because I'm a prototype and engineer and I build these things, right? So what happens is essentially, and by the way, I get questions of stuff. This is like an example of one of the prototype circuits that I'm building now on breadboard, right? I've got another one down here, looks similar, but it's the latest version, which I can't show you, but just assume I know what I'm talking about. So when a cell tower turns off, right, your mobile device is beaming out full power to try and find a cell tower somewhere nearby as like it's just a small packet of data, a ping, just to see if there's anyone out there, right? And your battery will run down immediately. So turn it into airplane mode. You also want to turn off the Bluetooth. Don't worry about the Bluetooth. Turn off the Wi-Fi as well as the cell data, right, which should be turned off anyway with airplane mode. And you can also obviously swipe down and you can change the brightness down to minimum. Now, you don't know how long it's going to be until the power turns back on. So you're better off assuming it's going to be a while and doing these quick steps on your mobile phone. The GPS is a monster, man. Turn the GPS off straight away. Sometimes you can turn off the IMU, the inertial sensors and stuff, but that's like literally a couple of milliamps of juice, so don't worry about that. Now, fill containers. Water's going to be the first problem. Don't forget, the classic thing that happens in a grid down scenario is your sewage systems become inoperable. And also, get this, when I researched for my original version of the Ultimate Guide to Prepping by Sigma Prepper, when I was writing that book originally, I was fact-checking myself and researching what the actual policy was for the water towers in your area. So, you know, water towers are fed with water from the municipality. They by gravity fed, right? You know, you get those things that look like cocktail glasses, right, sticking out the concrete things. Well, the water goes in there and it sits up there and then it's fed by gravity to the neighborhood, right, to the town. Now, in a grid down scenario, there are no pumps operational to pump the water into those water towers. So what happens is you literally, and the only requirement, right, for a municipality in America, the only requirement is to have, you know, the CDC says like 5 liters per person per day, right? About a gallon per person per day. So you have to have the CDC recommended amount of water for the number of people that water tower serves for a minimum of 36 hours. That's it. That's it. 36 hours is how much water's there. Now, that doesn't mean that you can keep turning the faucet on and you're going to be getting water coming out for 36 hours. No, 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 no. After 12 hours, the pressure of that water is going to be dropping big styley. Because don't forget, yeah, gravity fed. So the more waters that's stacked up in the water tower, the more weight pushing down to make the flow fast. If there's not much water left in there, the flow's like bloop, bloop, bloop. And you probably don't want to be drinking the water that's coming out of the last bit of it. So this is why this is in first action. Assume water's going to turn off within 24 hours. So fill containers and bathtubs with water. You can buy things like this Bob. Yeah, this Bob bath thing. You can lob it in the bath. You don't have to be, this is what I'm saying. You can have a water butt that you get in the garden that you can buy, like a 200 litre water butt. I've got like 3 of them in the garden that cost me like 40 bucks a piece on Amazon, right? Back in the day. And literally, if you don't even have to rig up all your guttering systems from your property, just fill it up with hose water, right? And then if you've got a Berkey filter or something like that, some ceramic and carbon, activated carbon water filter, you can just drink straight out of that, right? So you need to have that water on hand, because within 24 hours, your faucet, so there's no water coming out of that, right? And again, if you've got a well, if you're lucky enough, but is it lucky enough to have a well in your garden, then how are you going to be powering your well pump to make sure you can still feed your property with the water pressure that you need, right? So you're going to need to think backups for that. But these Bob things are great. You can lob in your bath, fill them up with water, and you can consume. These things are a couple of 100 litres themselves, right? So yeah, bear in mind, even if you're in an apartment block or something like that and don't have a backyard or a garage, then you can just, rather than water butts, you can just throw one of them in the bath, fill it up, good to go. So next up then, number 5, insulate fridges and freezers. Right. I was saying earlier about in all the countries that I've lived around the world that have regular power cuts, one of the, like after about 3 days, you usually smell barbecues everywhere, because they're like, well, it's a shame to let all the meat go to waste that's defrosting. We might as well cook up a barbie. So insulate fridges and freezers. Throw duvet or blanket over refrigerators and freezers to help them retain cold longer. Seal the doors with duct tape if necessary. If your freezer is not full of food, fill your empty freezer space with water jugs to retain the cold for longer. And the reason I wrote that is because if you've got empty space in your freezer, if you just fill up jugs of water and you're just storing energy, you're storing thermal energy in the form of, people don't seem to think that you can store cold thermal energy, but you can. If you fill it up with like jugs of water, not jugs, but do you know what I mean? If you've got like things of water and just fill up your freezer with those things, the empty space, when the power goes out, there's so much more, there's so much more thermal energy stored that it's more about the thermal energy that's required for it to thaw. Yeah, so if you've got lots of blocks of ice in there, you've got lots of things of water, in order for that temperature differential to meet the atmospheric one or the environmental one outside the freezer, it's got to pull all that energy out, and that's a long process. The more energy it's got to pull out. So that's what I'm saying. Fill up water, don't leave empty space in there. But you can't do that after. You've got to be doing that now, right? I'm just saying now. Do it. Before the power goes out. So, and again, you know, some of these seals you see on freezers and fridges, just by putting a bit of duct tape, on the door, you can extend the life. I've researched this. You can extend the life for like 2 days. Additionally, the seal has such a massive impact. So this is what I'm saying. Duvets, yeah, just blankets, put it over. You'll be surprised what it will do. So avoid gas stations at stores at all costs. The whole point of being prepared is you don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to be panicking or fearing or any of this nonsense, right? We're chilling, man. Yeah, we're just like doing our Sigma thing, yeah. So all you Sigma females and Sigma males out there, just kicking back, you know, enjoying it. And this is what I'm saying. I've been in supermarkets where it's kicking off, man, and people are panicking. It's not a good look, man. People are your neighbours, like acting like you're a stranger and shit. In the store, right, when you see them. That woman I was talking about who's grabbing the batteries out of that guy's trolley, just like I'm having them, and he's like, oh, this is in Thai language, obviously, but it's like, it gets gnarly, man. Different side of people comes out. So do not go to the gas stations or stores. This is like Black Friday on steroids and fentanyl at the same time, right? You don't want to be getting anywhere near that. I mean, they're just not going to be able to operate anyway. Don't forget, one of the first things as well that happens is all the cash registers fail. There's no, like, that's all part of that JIT system. There's no barcode reading going on, don't forget. There's no, like, oh, swipe my credit card bidney going on. Nah. And don't forget, how are they doing cash sales? Most things, they don't even know how much it costs unless they can go, boop, in the checkout, right? It's not like back in the day where we got little stickers on with a price, like $3.99. It's like, no, there's none of that. Yeah, if you've got something in your trolley and you haven't looked at the price before you've put it in, sorry about your luck. You're never going to know how much that costs until you get to the till. My point being is that when the grid goes down, there's no tills going, there's no checkouts going, there's no credit card processing going, there's no internet or communication. So how can you do credit card processing? It is a you-know-what show. And on top of that, you can try going to the ATM, the automatic teller machine. You can go try and draw money out of the bank machine. What's he going to say? Nothing. It's black. It's blank. It's silent. It's dead. Right? You get the picture? Not a good look. Stay out of gas stations and stores. The gas stations aren't going to work anyway because the pump that pumps the gas into your car needs juice to pump the juice. Yeah. Conserve and ration what you have. You can't assume to know how long this might go on for. Right? So you're better off assuming on day one it's going to be a while. Otherwise, you'll steam through all your preps or steam through all what you got in your cupboards on day one and wonder what's going on day 2, 3, 4. So, duration of power outage is uncertain, and burning through all your food and supplies the first day could lead to severe shortages as the crisis continues. So, this was my point of where, in the process of what should you do first, that's a breakdown from my book, obviously, on it, but yeah, it's all here. Turn off Bluetooth, fill containers with bath water, insulate secure fridges, right? Don't go to the store. So let's have a look then. This is basically what's kicking off on day one. So let's just remind you of day one. Look, traffic lights down. So traffic's gnarly. Train stuck. People are going to be walking home along train tracks with their smart brogues and their 3-piece suit and their briefcases. Yeah. And the women walking home from the office in their high heels, right? And with tights and stuff, right? So these are the things. Your fuel and gas is already offline. Your refrigeration, like all commerce, JIT system, right? Meat and medicine's spoiling already. Medicine. Yeah. Medicine. Don't forget that. The stuff in the fridge is not just about keeping the meat so it doesn't spoil. It's like medicine. So a lot of people need to keep medicines in the fridge. So you need to flow that into your equation, which is why I said it's like everyone's different. And you need to be dynamic in your approach to prepping and make it specific to you. There is no one. I can give you a framework and I can give you the concept and the mindset and the psychology behind the way you need to be thinking and how things happen. But you need to bend that and twist that into your own circumstance and your own needs. And that includes things like medication you need to keep refrigerated. So day 2 then, no work or school today. So this is what we're expecting to see tomorrow. Right? Schools are going to be closed, and this is assuming it's continued, and if it's not, it doesn't matter. This scenario assumes it is anyway for us who may go through an experience like this in the future, very near future, the way things are going, and we need to see how this plays out. So please hit the like button if you haven't done. It'd be lovely for you to support the show, and I've turned adverts off as well for everyone, so you shouldn't have any interruptions. Let me know if you're seeing any ads, but I did turn them off for everyone so that we didn't miss any slides and stuff. So I hope you're enjoying the show. God, I hate tights, says Kaza. Yeah, especially when you're walking home along a train track. So day 2 then, cash only. Like I said, ATM's down, so there's no getting any money out, so there's no cash. And unless you've got whatever you've got yourself already. Stores limited stock, even those that are able to do transactions using just cash and they know how much the stuff in their store is priced at. It's going to be limited. The roads are going to be gridlocked, don't forget, because you've got things like people running out of fuel in their car where they can't refuel from a gas station because they're shut, because the pumps aren't working. And even if the pumps are working, the cash registers aren't. So you've got the cars stuck on the road, the electric cars, forget about it. I mean, they're just going to be littering the streets everywhere, just, you know, get it. So the roads are going to be gridlocked because it's going to be the traffic lights with all the accidents that happened because the traffic lights went out yesterday. Don't forget as well on day 1. No ad seen. Lovely to hear, Daily Survival. So stores limited stock. As I say, there's not going to be much point going to a store because with limited stock on day 2, Anyone that was still able to make transactions on day one would have probably, through people panic buying, would have run out extremely quickly anyway. So very limited stock on day two. So roads gridlocked, as I said, air travel cancelled. All those people that we saw on X just earlier on in the report today, looking at all those people in the airport, wondering where we're going, how we're getting there, and you know, all the boards just completely dark, no locations on there. It's not a good look, right? And of course, no way to contact their loved ones to say our plane isn't going to be arriving because it's not going to be taking off. There's no cell service, so you can't call them to tell them, right? It's just a complete disaster. So we've got CCTV off. This is where crime goes up, don't forget. So just think about it, right? Criminals know this stuff, right? Criminals are just waiting for something like a power outage to happen, right? Because they know that security systems are down, the battery backup in those security systems are limited, the CCTV systems are going to be down, the police are going to be busy dealing with all those car accidents from day one and stuff like that, with the, you know, all the people crashing because the traffic lights aren't working and having fender benders, yeah. And so criminals know when their prime times are. Yeah, I used to be a security consultant, right? I ran a security business in the Middle East, let's just say, right, doing high-level security alarm systems and, you know, for businesses and personal custom stuff, right, laser perimeter fence stuff, right, and CCTV was a part of it. But you know, you get to know what the mindset of criminals are. You get to know how they operate and how, therefore, to defend against it. That's why it's one of my specialities, right? And so I can tell you now, when the CCTV goes off, the criminals know it too, right? They're already banking on it. For them, this isn't just business as usual. This is like business as usual on steroids and fentanyl for them. They're like, right, we're going to clean up, boys and girls these days. So localized looting, day two. Now this is assuming in our SHTF scenario for our power outages thing we're doing, right? We're assuming somewhat of an urban, high-dense living environment, because it's just easier to do it that way, because it's better to look at a worst-case scenario and you can scale back on that yourself in your own location. You may find that the gnarliness that we get to on day 14 might not be the gnarliness purge level of how shit pans out on day 14 for you where you are, but you may be able to extend that to 28 days in relative terms, right? So you need to, you know, when I talk about crime and stuff, Dave J in the house, respect with the letter K and gang signs. Thank you for joining. YouTube doesn't usually let anyone join this channel. That's what happens when you're over the target so regularly. They don't like people being prepared. Of course, you know, people who are prepared are a great threat to, you know, they want you to be dependent, right? If you're not dependent on the government systems, then you're not controllable, right? So this is the ish. So thank you for subscribing, and do make sure you hit the notification bell, because the amount of people I have per week sending me videos showing me how YouTube always unsubscribes them from this channel. Doesn't seem to do it to any other channels. It's amazing. Anyway, stop moaning, Drew. Okay, I'm not moaning anymore. Emergency backups failing. This is going to be, you know, by day two, I can tell you now, a lot of the alarm systems that I used to install and modify and develop and stuff were, I mean, the battery packs on them were only good for about, you know, like 6-7 hours maybe. Yeah. The systems that I used to, it depends, but I mean, the systems I used to employ have like GSM modules in them that can transmit stuff via cell module, right? Cell phone module. So they take a bit more juice. But I'm just saying, you know, you're not looking at much more than about 8 hours of battery backup on things like security systems and backup lights in hospitals. They usually go for about 12 hours maybe, right? So day three then. Day three is where we start getting stuff like government radio broadcasts. Don't forget, people aren't going to have television sets. They're not going to have other forms of internet like social media or Facebook to get news from. This is where people start getting panicky, because, you know, I think when people are cut off from information, they cut off from their friends and family and seeing what they're up to and how they're getting on the other side of the country. This is what makes, particularly my example here, a nationwide grid down scenario such a big threat to society, and how it fails and pulls itself apart so quickly, as you'll see as we go through these slides, is because it's that blindness feeling. The government can't even communicate with you. There isn't any TV. So what happens is they start doing radio broadcasts, and like most people can sit in their car. Yeah, and you having a car is a great force multiplier, because you can have your car cigarette lighter socket with USB plugged in and stuff to charge your devices, charge your flashlights or whatever you need to keep things rocking in your radios. But equally, you can use your car to listen to the radio. But don't run your battery down. You need to make sure, you've got some spare fuses in your car in case you blow one, if you're using it excessively for the power of it as a generator, right? But also bear in mind the average sort of SUV, because again I prefer to give you the worst case, but the average SUV is consuming up to about 0.5 to 0.6 gallons per minute per hour on idle. So for every hour you sit your car on your driveway or on the side of the road just on tick over, yeah, 1200 RPM, tick over, idle, you're talking about half a gallon of juice an hour. Half a gallon of juice. So if you work out what your average gas tank size is and how full it is, right? The average is going to be something like about 5 to 10 gallons only. And so you're only talking, you know, several instances of keeping that running for an hour if you're charging your devices off. If you're charging your devices from your car cigarette lighter socket or other 12-volt devices you might have that you're plugging in, and you don't have the engine running where the alternator is recharging the battery, then you're just going to drain the battery down and sorry about your luck, right? So you need to keep the engine running and so it can replace the energy you're taking from it. But at the same time, bear in mind, half a gallon an hour of juice it will use. Now, you've probably read through this while I'm babbling on, but frozen food is now thawing on day 3. Don't forget, like I said, most places I've lived, you start smelling barbecue smoke around about day 3, right? Now, you have to flow into the equation. Again, this is subject to your climate, because when I'm living in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia like Thailand on a little island and I'm dealing with this kind of bullshit, you're talking about an ambient temperature of like 100 degrees, yeah, 40 Celsius or so. And so, of course, that's going to affect the thaw rate of anything you've got in the freezer. Whereas if you're in the UK in the winter, and you're talking, you know, like ambient temperature of more like 20 degrees or 10 degrees Celsius, more like sort of 40, 50 Fahrenheit, then of course it's going to take longer for your food to thaw. So bear that in mind, right? So mobile device is dead. You know, if you imagine, most people can attest now live in the chat with us. What happens if your car's electric? You don't want to know? I think we all can guess what happens if your car's electric. But it can be usable, but only up until a point, right? You're not going to be able to recharge it. They'll be the first to go anyway, because they'll be considered non-essential, the charge stations, right? Because the charge stations aren't responsible for delivering goods, right? So big logistics, trucks and lorries that are required for things like taking supplies to hospitals, to grocery stores and things like that, what are prioritized. So the first thing that's turned off, even if they had backup power, is the charge stations for EVs, because they're considered low priority vehicles, because there are no police cars or ambulances or fire engines or logistics goods transport vehicles that are anything other than diesel or petrol. So any contingency for gas and fuel will be specifically internal combustion engines only. The EVs for electric cars will be the last thing turned back on. Check out Random Warrior keeping the show alive and the ads turned off. Thank you so very much, man. I really appreciate you, Random Warrior. It's such a great part of Wolfpack, man. I really appreciate the way you support the channel and show your love the way you do. D-Sec in the house. Great to see you, man. Good to see you. All hungry peeps will follow their nose that day, won't they, Just? So, of course, mobile device is dead, as you can all probably agree. Your mobile phone without being charged isn't going to last more than 3 days now, is it? Even with the advice I was giving you earlier in regard to if you do find yourself in that situation, the first thing you do need to do, just referring back to my book here, conserve your mobile battery. You need to put it in airplane mode. You need to turn the GPS services off. You need to turn the Bluetooth off. You need to turn the brightness down on the screen and all that good stuff, because and this 3 days, day 3, where your mobile devices are dead, this is assuming that you've done all that as well, right? And not if you've got some ancient phone like me, because you just haven't got any money and you can't afford a new one. But you can probably tell by the camera on the back how old this thing is. Yeah. So yeah, this is ancient. This thing, the batteries on this thing last like 10 minutes, right? So this wouldn't even be good on day 1. But I'm alright. I've got off-grid backup power. I can charge in perpetuity. So you need to have your I mean, my entire lab here is self-powered, if you like, off-grid. So, you know, I've got microgreen shelving as well with grow light LEDs for doing microgreens. So I can shut all of the shutters in here in the lab, and I can grow microgreens in here without ever opening a blind or a shutter, by pulling the light from the solar panels on top into my grow lights. And we can even grow food being completely locked down and shut down. So this is where you want to aim to be, right? And self-perpetuating. I can charge e-bikes and stuff with the off-grid power. So you've got unlimited transport. If you need to go down to the local reservoir or the lake or something to collect water, having things like an e-bike with a trailer, where you've got an off-grid power system. I mean, mine's not humongous, but it's bigger than most people have got. And it didn't cost me that much money because I built it myself. But the ability to be able to have transport like that as well, with a cool e-bike, right? It doesn't have to be some super crazy 2 kilowatt e-bike, but I'm just saying there's things that you can do, right? And still be comfortable. So ankle bracelets offline. And the reason I put this in there, again, coming from consultancy background I do, these are things you have to consider. So ankle bracelets offline, you know, the criminals who get tagged on their ankle bracelets. Do you remember I said to you about, it's like, you know, it's not just business for usual for criminals and stuff. When a grid goes down, they're waiting for these opportunities. They know exactly what they're going to do. The other thing that happens is those ankle bracelets can't be recharged. So guess what? They're offline. So now they feel like it's proper open season, right? So all the dudes and dudettes and dude in-betweeners who had their ankle bracelets rocking, they ain't caring about them now. So they're rolling with the rest of their gangs and stuff. So things get gnarlier. People care less. And things start degrading quite rapidly at this point. Day 3 as well is the kind of time where, you know, people start getting needy for food and water as well, because those, unlike those who follow this channel, who don't have things like water in reserve and filters and things like this, or things like those bath bob things that I showed earlier that you can just lob in the bath here and fill up with water. It's like a big bag that goes in the bath, and you can use the water from there over days for drinking and things like that, right? And critical usage. Don't forget, 3 days without water, lights out. So you need to keep hydrated big time. Yeah, you're talking about, you know, minimum you want to be looking at is like 4 liters a day per person, right? 4 liters a day per person. CDC says 5 liters, but that's more if you've got things like okay, just so you know, the reason that CDC says it recommends 5 liters, even though the human body doesn't necessarily need 5 liters, is to allow for all of the conditions possible. Just so you know, if you want to refine your water storage more to be more perfect, right? But so, for example, a male requires more water than a female. A female can get by about 2.5 liters a day, a male about 3.5 liters a day. But the reason you stretch it to 5 liters is because that doesn't allow for environment. It doesn't allow for respiration rate. It doesn't allow for heat, and it doesn't allow for things like if you've got diarrhea or you're ill. So if you combine all of those things together, where you're living in an environment where it's super, super hot, you're a male, and you're, yeah, you can imagine, right? You just need more, and you've got diarrhea or something, or dehydrated. So just so you know what your allowances are. But people are already going to start getting needy for that. Don't forget, day 3 is where your water stops, goes down to a trickle. Your municipality faucet water is going to be a trickle at this point. Don't forget, they're only legislated to have to store enough water per person that's in their service area for 36 hours, not 3 days, right? So, assume that's all gone. Cars stranded, no fuel, cell towers offline, of course, your backups are dead as well in the cell towers. So those people that were lucky enough to be in more of the inner city areas that are probably more likely to have more substantial battery backup solutions embedded in them versus sort of more suburban or rural areas where the cell towers are considered less critical, so they will have less of a battery backup in there, if any at all. But those that in the cities even that we're talking about here, after 3 days, those cell towers are totally off. As in, before, they were only on for emergency usage on backup power, so you're only talking about emergency usage like barely even text message, emergency calls, no data. So on day 3, that's gone completely, right? Totes completely. So next up then is day 4. This is where stress and unrest starts to like epically increase, right? Things start getting gnarly now because, you know, people expect things to be over and done with. They expect to already on Tuesday morning. Tomorrow morning, people in Spain are going to wake up and just expecting it to be fixed, right? And despite how some areas may be, other areas will remain unfixed for a while, right? And we don't even know what the projections are yet. So this is what we have to assume. But by the time you get to day 4, people are already going, oh man, I can't believe it's still going. This is something bad, man. This is bad. This is worse than they're telling us. They're not telling us what's really going on. Bad, right? And this is the sort of mindset that starts feeding into people, because don't forget the day before, you've already had people knocking on your door probably asking if you've got any water because they've run out. You've already had people knocking on your door saying, have you got any milk? Have you got any sugar? Have you got any whatever? Right? So day 4, people are starting to sort of like really like look around them and seeing the state that everyone else is. And the other thing that starts happening as soon as day 4 is we start looking at things like home invasions at night, right? So you've got police are out on the streets because they're trying to maintain law and order. You've got the mains water pressure is pretty much gone by now. So unless you stored water yourself, sorry about your luck. The power is prioritized for the government. So any of those mobile military-based power generators, they look like they're like a container, like a shipping container, but they're sort of retrofitted to be like a power generator that can run large buildings or, you know, a small street of houses on a backup level. Not a small street of houses, but it may be an industrial thing. So the military have these big power generators and they use diesel fuel, right? But that's going to be prioritized to the government. They ain't giving you any of that, right? They ain't going to let you plug your iPhone into the back of their backup generator that they've just pulled up and parked up outside White House, or just parked up outside a hospital, for example. So as well as your mains water pressure going, which is going to instill more panic, because people, when they get thirsty and hungry, they start getting gnarly. We'll see that in the next few slides, right? So police are out on the streets because there's already been reports of violence, looting, crime, panic, violence just going on where people are trying to steal stuff. You got burglaries and break-ins start increasing, so you're getting used to this becomes just normal. I know in some places you're going to tell me that you live this is normal anyway without there being a power outage, but like I say, the day before, don't forget, is when things like your ankle bracelets are offline and your cell towers offline. When cell towers go offline, don't forget, that also means that the criminals know, as well as that their ankle bracelets aren't working anymore and aren't being, our batteries are flat, you know. They know there's no telecommunications, so people can't report them either for help. So burglaries, break-ins increase, and accidents increase as well. Now, the reason I say this is that I experienced this as well when we were living in Thailand. When the power went out, there was lots of people who set fire to their stuff, and they were all Western people. You never see a Thai person setting fire to their own house. I'll say never, but I'm just saying, when you're used to using things all the time, you can tell the people who aren't. And so this is why I'm just giving you this caveat, heads up warning, is that the amount of people who set fire to their house because they start using these lanterns or these candles that they've got in a bag, and they forget about it, or they position it somewhere where they underestimate how high that heat can rise and the top of their bottom of their curtain starts going, or whatever it is, right? Or their kid or their dog, or, you know, their child knocks over a lamp or a candle and sets fire to something. You know how it goes, right? So I don't condone the use of candles at all. with modern day technology, with lithium cell technology and flashlights being so efficient, particularly cob LEDs, you know, there's no need to not only create the fire risk and the safety hazard if you've got young children or pets around that you don't want to get harmed by open flames, then it's the CO level, the carbon monoxide levels coming off a candle. Don't underestimate it. Those people that sit there all the time with scented candles in their room 24/7, believe me, just don't be doing it, right? Don't underestimate it. Breathe in your room through some cloth and you'll see what I'm chatting about. It'll be blick. Yeah? Proper blick. So, is it worth it, right? Use flashlights, you know, with cob LEDs and 18650 cells, right? Because they're good size, they store a lot of energy in them, and you won't need to charge it. Just one charge on an 18650 with a decent head torch, headlamp, I recommend. Accidents are increasing, so don't forget, this is going to cause more panic when people are burning their houses down. This is why we talk about in our principles and here at Sigma Prepper, where we talk about bugging out versus homesteading or bugging in. I did a whole show about that, but basically the idea of being prepared to bug out with bug out bags or things like inch bags and stuff like this, I'm never coming home bags, right, is because you don't know what might happen. I mean, look at what we've had recently with the wildfires, with earthquakes and all these other things where people have been forced to leave their home to evacuate. It might not be because, you know, of what you may foresee. It could be an evacuation order. So if you've already prepared to bug out, grab a bag, you've got your main stuff, your documents, your ID, there's things you need, and off you pop, right? And accidents and fires is one of the biggest reasons why people are forced to bug out of their property, because they set fire to their house and you've got no choice but to be bugging out somewhere, because you ain't going to be hanging about in the rubble of your property. That gets into the bugging in part of it, but don't be doing it. So riots are increasing, so this is going to get proper gnarly, because we're not just talking about nighttime looting and burglaries like I said a few days ago. Now we're talking about daytime, right? Like people getting robbed in the day, right? So, and riots going daytime, you know, the government needs to help us, you need to turn Facebook back on, this kind of nonsense, right? Hospitals struggling. Don't forget, hospitals have backup power, but only to a degree, only for a couple of days. So all those people that are undergoing heart surgery when the power goes off, imagine that, right? And their backup battery systems aren't as good as they should be, not by any means. So I'm really being kind by saying day 4. That's like some super advanced hospital in the middle of a city. And even then it's going to be overrun so quick with stuff running out that the doors will be shut. We ain't getting into that though. So home invasions at night. This is what causes the panic, right? The home invasions at night start happening on day 4. As little as day 4. Yeah? Just boom, boom, boom. Yeah? Give us all your stuff. Oh, we're smashing the door down. This kind of stuff. And the problem is that everybody who's living on that street is hearing this at night. Right? So you got your single lone women, you got your family of 5 in your house, you're living on the street and you're hearing at nighttime glass breaking, you know, children screaming and crying and fights going on between dudes and more glass breaking. I just need you to be in this mindset. This is what's going to be going on. Yeah, you're going to be sitting there in your bed and you're going to be hearing that shit going down. Right? And you're going to be wondering, is our house next? Is that gang going to come to our house next? Desperate for food, desperate for water, desperate for meds, desperate for whatever they're looking for. They don't care anymore. There's no cameras, there's no security alarms, there's no ankle bracelets. Do you get me? There's no phoning anyone for help. There's no asking the audience. None of that's happening in a crisis like this. And the criminals know it. The criminals know it. Anyway. That leads us into day 5, crime and violence increasing, right? It just becomes a continual increase in crime, I hate to tell you, but crime increases day 5, desperation setting in because don't forget we've got no water now for some time, yeah? So things start happening quickly on day 5 because, you know, the night before you've already had loads of home invasions going on and things like this. which has had a massive effect on people's psyche. And it doesn't just have effect on that. It's also the way it changes how people treat each other, because they really start getting defensive. They really start going inward. They really start not trusting their neighbours. Maybe our neighbours are going to come and try and steal our stuff. Right, this sort of mindset starts kicking in. In my book, The Ultimate Guide to Prepping, you'll see in day 5 here, the way I break it down here about crime increases, the drug addicts and alcoholics desperate, right? So those people who haven't been able to get their drug fixes, those people who haven't been able to buy their alcohol, those people who haven't had to have their anti-psych meds. Do you get where I'm going with that? You've got to think this stuff through, step by step in your mind. And imagine, yeah, medicine shortages, hospital triage worsens, yeah, essential workers only. We've been there. Backup generators failing, sewage systems fail, right? So it's like the gnarly stuff as well. Like you're flushing the toilet, right? And it ain't going anywhere. Imagine that. Been there, lich. Been there. It's not nice. It's not nice. And these are the things I'm saying is about the psyche. This is what makes people panic. This is what people, oh, I want this to be over. I need this to be finished now. I can't cope with this. This is what happens. So this is where that desperation, right? And it's because of all these other things, yeah? So day 6, you know, things are starting to get crazy. Yeah. Not even phone a friend. Exactly, Random Warrior. Not even phone a friend. Thank you everyone for being with me live. I do appreciate you sharing this time with me. I've turned the ads off for you. If you appreciate that, please hit the like button if you'd like to support the show. I really appreciate that. So day 6 then, things are starting to get crazy. So containers and warehouses raided. Right. It doesn't stop at people raiding their shops. Where was that? Was it South Africa? In 2020, was it 2021 in South Africa? There were warehouses raided. There were like all the containers in the port. They were like using oxyacetylene torches to cut through padlocks on containers at ports to steal the stuff. People got desperate, right? So containers and warehouses get raided. Pro hunters start rocking. So, you know, day 6, if you didn't have any food in your cupboard, you ain't got many options apart from to go hunting. So anyone who's got an old fishing rod in the attic, anyone who's got an old air rifle in the garage, right, starts dusting it off, looking to see where the pellets are, looking to see where the shells are, looking to see where the bait is, right? And they're thinking, well, you know, we got to do something. We got to do something. So the professional hunters, though, unfortunately for them, are already out there. This is the time they've been waiting for. They're out there with their compound crossbows. They're out there with their, you know what's, doing their thing, right? Depending on where you live. But this isn't an option, obviously, for inner city dwellings or places, unless, you know, you've got some lake somewhere that you can try and... But don't forget, everybody's going to have the same idea as you, right? Everyone will have the same idea as you. Which is why in my book here, look, things getting crazy. This is like day 6, and you see the dude here with his crossbow. So yeah, it's amazing and really disappointing how quickly humanity sort of breaks down, to be honest. So anyway, yeah, relief centers set up. So you got FEMA starts getting their stuff together in many of the big towns and cities, particularly universities is usually where they'll set up first as the triage centers. You got supply chain shut down completely at this point. Nothing's moving anywhere. Nothing's being traded. Nothing's being reordered for you know, the next container shipment. Nothing. You got night crime escalates. You got gangs going door to door now, just going through, just taking all your stuff, whether you want it or not. Pets going hungry. A lot of people who aren't prepared, obviously, they don't consider things like their pets as well. And so, you know, please don't forget your pets and make sure that you flow them into the equation because, again, I'm sorry to say, but I've lived in countries where we've been involved in a crisis that has resulted in so many pets being stranded because they couldn't feed them. They just let them go. Right? People let their pets go. That's what happens, just so you know. Right? This is reality. This is Western culture I'm talking about. What people do is because they don't they don't know what else to do. They just think, you know what, if I let my dog out the gate and just try and drop them off somewhere, or just hope that they can fend for themselves because I can't feed it. So you got stuff like that. You get loads of like, this is where you end up getting loads of packs of dogs going around and dog fights going on at night as well, you're hearing. It's because of that, right? Not to mention, by this time, because of the problem you've had with refuge being collected, and garbage trucks being able to get about or take it anywhere, yeah, all your garbage is piling up, and so you've got rats and infestations starting to happen already at this point in some of the bigger areas outside restaurants, in like back alleys, right? Baby formula and sterilizers, right? You got to think about how you're going to be sterilizing your baby equipment, right? Most people use like various things that require energy, electricity, whether that's microwaving your sterilizing stuff or being able to boil water to do it. So you need to figure that out, and you need to have enough baby formula because that'll be the first thing off the shelf. Don't worry about that. So care home struggling. Don't forget all those poor elderly people in the care home. You're relying on those individual carers to come to work every day to see that your grannies and your granddads and your aunties and your uncles are all, you know, not vulnerable in a care home without AC, without heating, without electricity, without anything, without food and water at this point, because if you ain't getting water, nor are the care homes. And where the military may or may not be taking water, it's not going to be anywhere near where you and I are. So bear that in mind, right? It's really awful. And I have seen this happen, and like friends tell me stories about how it went. It's really not good. So anyway, day 7. Feeling like you're in the purge. Lich. Inner city, high crime rate type places, when you study how quickly things fall apart, by day 7 you're already feeling like you're in the purge. This is why I keep saying you can't underestimate the impact of a grid down scenario on a Western country. As I've said, when you live in other countries that are like non-Westernized like that, they don't have that infrastructure, you get used to it, and you get used to having the things that you have and the techniques and the skills that you learn to be able to do things without electricity, right? But because people in the West haven't had time to learn those things overnight, then you know you just become vulnerable, and that's where the panic sets in. So this is why it results so quickly to feeling like the purge, because that crime is the thing. Crime is the thing that just goes through the roof. The people that you would never suspect resorting to crime, believe me, when their children are going hungry, their children are already angry because they can't play their favorite PlayStation game. The husband's already angry because he can't get his 8-pack of beer he likes to have. I don't drink alcohol, so I don't have to worry about stuff like that. And I'm not judging anyone who does, but I'm just saying this is coming under the alcoholics thing we looked at on day 3 or whatever it was, where they start getting gnarly without their alcohol and their drugs. Right? It's all those things combined. It's the compounding nature, right? It's the cascading, compounding nature of a grid down scenario. It starts to emerge day by day to all of the people going through it, just how much you relied on energy for. It's a very awakening experience, right? And if anything, if it's the first time you go through it for like a week or two, we've been 21, 22 days without power. But we were living on a tropical island, so it was quite civilized. And you're living like that anyway. That's not the case. A 22, 23 day blackout with no water being delivered and stuff like that, like we lived through, you wouldn't survive that in an inner city, so it's not comparable. But day 7 is. Yeah, so shops totally cleaned out. Daytime crime escalates. They don't even care now. They're literally just ballied up and going door to door. Livestock slaughtered. Yes, indeed. I've seen that. It's amazing. Don't forget Venezuela. They started breaking into zoos and butchering the animals. This is how desperate humans get. You might not think you will, but these are the same people as you. Just because they live in another country doesn't mean that you would act any differently. That's the first thing you need to check at the door. Check it at the door, man. 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Yeah. So by the time you've already gone your 3 days without any water, you're already feeling pretty gnarly. You're already dependent on other people to try and supply you with water, unless you've been following this channel enough and you've got stored water, right? Now, Stuff like emergency staff shortages and livestock. Yeah, not just zoo animals, but livestock just lying dead on the field with just chunks missing out of them. I've seen that as well after, like, not even this long in other countries before. So curfew is to, yeah, the emergency infrastructure failing, the emergency staff shortages. So you're going to have people not turning up for work. You're going to have police officers, nurses, care staff just not turning up for work. And I'll tell you why. Because if you can imagine you're a police officer. Okay, let me spell it out. Imagine this. Day 6, don't forget, we've got stuff like night crime escalates with gangs and shit going door to door, right? We've also got here daytime crime escalates, yeah? So what you've got to imagine, right, is a police officer who goes to work to do his shift, and it's a complete shit show, as you can imagine. Imagine being a police officer during all this, right? I don't even know what your tasks would be. In your shift, right? But when you come home from your shift to your wife and your 3 kids, and they're crying their eyes out, right? Shivering in the corner, and you're like, what the hell's been going on here? And they can barely even talk, they can't even stop crying because while you're at work, there's been a gang come round and threatening them with banging on the door. They smashed the front window. They reckon they're going to come back again. And they went down the road, and I heard them smash the door of, you know, Mrs. Smith down at number 28, you know, and it was like scary. The kids are... This is what this police officer is coming back to in his home. Do you think he's going to be going to work the next day and leaving his wife and his kids on their own in that property? I don't think so. So that's what I mean about emergency staff shortages. It's not through choice. It's like these guys or gals or in-betweeners are just like, do I really want to leave my family vulnerable when the shit's hitting the fan? I need to be at home protecting my family. I can't be out there getting shot at and getting... Do you know what I mean? As a police officer, ambulance crew, paramedic, you name it. Yeah, people are humans, don't forget. Even police officers, for those that don't think they are, right? We're all human, right? We all have the same feelings. They're our own, right? Never forget that. Emergency infrastructure failing, big time. Curfew established, big time. Like, you ain't going out anywhere after, like, 9 p.m. or 6 p.m. or some shit. And if you're seen on the streets, like, before 9 a.m. or something, you know, you're going to get rounded up and put in a FEMA camp. You know how it goes. Maced and tased. Right, in a FEMA camp. Sorry about your luck. So, farm livestock supply disruptions, because of course the farms haven't been able to do anything, have they? For like a week now, they haven't been able to take anything anywhere. Farming is a complex thing, particularly with things like, you know, particularly with like animals, like cows and pigs, particularly where there's a very tight rotation of when things need to happen to that go into there. They need to be moved out to there before they can go out to there. Farms themselves operate with their own almost like JIT system, their just-in-time system. Very, very sensitive and vulnerable to these sorts of things, right? Just like we saw in 2020 with you-know-what going on with you-know-who. So stress and anxiety levels very high. Can you imagine what I'm describing here going on, where you've got like children and women like screaming and crying down the road and windows getting smashed and dudes shouting and fighting and what? Yeah. And you walk down the street to see what's going on and all you see is big puddles of blood on the floor, right? These are sort of things you've got to understand you're going to be faced with, right? Purple Flurple here, look, thank you for joining us live. Please do let us know what you're up to live in the chat and what your thoughts are. It's Purple Flurple. Trust me, I'd still be expected to go to work. Our store runs throughout, even if you're dead out there. Amazing. People occasionally steal and butcher horses here in South Florida. It would only escalate post-collapse. Yeah, man. Trap Rats, great to see you, man. Fitness is the biggest thing. Most people pile food and ammo and can run a 30-minute mile, yeah. If even a mile, yeah. Thank you so much for being with us. Please hit the like button if you're enjoying the show and you appreciate my efforts putting this together for you. Yeah, thank you to those who have been helping the channel with the donations. You shouldn't be seeing any ads for this. You will do after it's been live. I don't know what YouTube does putting ads on, but while I'm live, it's difficult for people because they miss a slide or something I'm going on about. So stress and anxiety levels, as you can fully appreciate, are going to be through the roof on day 7. Now, what I've done here is skip ahead to day 14 because this is complete chaos and desperation, and it's quite a variable. There's quite a variable involved in terms of where you live, urban, rural, in the middle of nowhere, amongst a prepping community, amongst people who have got no idea and are just don't know where to begin in an apartment block. You can expand and extrapolate the trend that we saw during the last week, day 6, day 7, the way things escalate, the way things break down, the cascade effect that has on you, and so on. So day 14 plus, we're like 2 weeks in, this is where we start talking about wildlife is already hunted. Wildlife is already hunted, right? It's like all the pro hunters have already got anything that there was there. I don't know about you. In the UK, there's literally no wildlife anywhere. These fantasy preppers who thinks they're going to go out with their little 2-2 air rifle and, like, you know, start living on pigeons. First of all, don't ever eat a pigeon. There's reasons why not, right? And second of all, you got to be realistic about just how much wildlife actually exists out there in our Western countries. A lot of it has been we've dehabitatized all of our poor little creatures here, whether it's foxes, pigeons, squirrels, which is the premise of my singleprepper.com on my main webpage, singleprepper.com. That's the whole point of this, right? On my first page, don't end up around a campfire eating squirrels on sticks. That's where I came up with this. It's like, this is what happens, yeah? They're bugged out in the woods and they got squirrels on sticks. It's not good. I'll tell you one thing I definitely recommend is the link in the description below. There is the Wolfpack report, which is my monthly newsletter with all the cool stuff going on with Single Prepper, all the great stuff with the Single Prepper community. There is a link in the description of this video that will allow you, because I'll tell you what you might like, particularly for those of you that are in the Southern Hemisphere right now, where you've got winter coming in, so people like our Carolyn Rose from Australia, and others. So we've got the Ultimate Wolfpack report, and this is my monthly newsletter. It's completely free, that I've just launched. So get yourself entered in here. Just your name, first name, it's fine. Yeah, no spam, none of that stuff. It's just you, me, and the Wolfpack report. So add your email in there, and what you'll get is a link. You can download your free winter prepping guide. So do you see, like, you've got my Ultimate Prepping Guide by Sigma Prepper, my book that will be coming out later this year. Well, I also produced for you the Winter Prepping Guide, which I'm giving away free to anyone who wants it. It's 42 pages. It looks like this. It's got a tick box list that you can go through and check off the items you need, stuff to put in your car, loads of fundamental fact sheets in there. Everything is illustrated and documented for you. And with all of my Wolfpack reports, there'll be all sorts of reasons: the howls and growls, global threat analysis reports, free prepping guides and survival resources, inside analysis and alerts. There's so many reasons to get yourself a copy of that. Get yourself entered in. It's completely free. I spent ages building it for you. This is the sort of stuff I do because I love you. Talking of which, love, peace and progress to the pack. Cheers to you. If you ever find yourself in a grid down scenario, please remember this show, or at least bits of it, right? So wildlife totally hunted. See you later. Not happening. Yeah, there's barely any wildlife that's edible in our countries now in the West anyway, so don't rely on that, for crying out loud. Which kind of reminds me of my prepping profiles, which was a unique take that I had on things in my many years of prepping. I've seen so many preppers out there with big channels making the most fundamental mistakes, and it generally comes down to them not operating as a, you know, you gotta be thinking strategically. Let's just say that, right? You can't just be copying every other prepper channel and just saying, yeah, do that, and then no. You got to be a little bit more thought through. So this is where I devised this many years ago, but people really liked it and it stuck with them. So this is the prepper profiles, which talks about people, how prepared they are: water infiltration, food storage, energy and fuel. I've categorized it. So this is what the average Joe looks like who's prepared, right? So you can see there's like down a timeline here. This is in months. 6, 12, 18 months. So that first section down there is basically weeks. So the number 1 there is week 1. So most people can survive about a week. Not comfortably, because you can survive 3 weeks without food if you've got water. But the problem is that you're not going to be sustaining yourself for more than about 3 or 4 weeks, assuming you live in a really nice area. Yeah, that's assuming you live in a really nice area. So this is the reality of it. Now, you get people like the hunter. Now, the hunter type of prepper, I know there's people out there that are going to start throwing channel names at me who they know are guilty of these things, right? But the hunter is all about the hunting and growing. They're all about having all the gear and some of them an idea. But look, when it comes to energy and fuel, they've only got a week or so's worth of energy and fuel because they're just not into that. They're not passionate about that. They don't care about that. They care about guns and ammo and, you know, archery, and which is great, and growing and vegetable patches and brilliant. But by forgetting about all the other stuff, you're leaving yourself vulnerable, right? Oh, check out Random Warrior, what a superstar. Happy belated 3rd birthday gift. I watched the rerun. Hope I don't get put in the naughty step. No one's ever getting put in the naughty step. That's only ever going to be used once. I don't know what to tell you, man. Thank you so very much for your kind support and showing your appreciation, the work that I do for you guys. I really appreciate those of you who show your support like that. It's so heavily needed right now with everything I'm doing, and the way YouTube makes this channel so impossible to be found by anyone, despite coming from a background of SEO and stuff. It's embarrassing. But thank you to Random Warrior. What an absolute wonderful support of the show. Couldn't do it without you, quite literally. And Debbie Sermon as well, helping us tonight with the super chats. A food shortage due to unseen threats, traveling to hunt, etc. Those people that are planning to just do hunting and growing, don't forget, you've got to be traveling to and from your hunting ground. Good luck with that. You're going to have gangs of people waiting there to take your fishing rod, take your catch, you know, take your squirrels or whatever you've caught, right? And your gear. Every time you leave your property, you're putting yourself at risk. And who's looking after your missus? Who's looking after your kids while you're off down the lake fishing? Come on, think it through, right? So you got the kitchen queen. Everyone's going to know a prepping channel that's a kitchen queen, right? Or an individual prepper that's a kitchen queen, right? So these are people who are great preppers, right? They got all the water and filtration solutions, right? They got all the Berkey filters, your ceramics, you know, all sorts of stuff going on. You've got food storage up to the hilt, you know, they're jarring, they're canning, they're vacuum wrapping, their oxygen absorber putting in the vacuum wrapping, yeah? And they're doing all the right things. All the right things, yeah? But check it out again, security and protection, completely overlooked, right? These are the people that tell me, oh, Drew, I'm all right, man. I've got 12 months worth of preps. These are the people that tell me I've got 12 months worth of preps, but have they really? Have they really got 12 months of preps? Because look at security and protection, they've got less than a week's worth. Too much focus put on the food storage and stuff like the water and the pets and animals, but no method to be able to protect it from someone who's going to try and take it. So to be honest, any food preps that you buy beyond the security means you have to protect it, what are you doing? You're just giving it to someone else who's going to take it from you. Predicted outcome up the top there, look. No protection, invaded, overpowered, or robbed. Right? Same as the energy and fuel. If you've got all this food, you need to have the energy and fuel you need to cook it. Right? This is not, this is not advanced stuff, but you would imagine it is when you see the stuff that people are spouting out there about what you should do or not, right? Or what you should spend your money on. The whole point is incremental prepping strategy means that you're prepping for a week and you're getting all the stuff down those columns that you need for a week. When you've done that, you need to then move to your plans to build a month's worth of prepping. And you then need to implement that in a specific order so that you're not ending up like this, where the commando, and again, everyone knows YouTubers or preppers who are commandos, right? These are the people who are all about the look at me with my camo jacket and my shotgun and all this chewing tobacco business, right? Not realistic. Not realistic. So the medical supplies, they don't usually care about that because they're invincible. They ain't getting shot. They're commandos, don't forget, right? They've got all the gear. Most of them, no idea, but they've at least got all the gear. Pets and animal supplies, fuck my dog. Ain't even thought about that. I was just worried about buying bullets and stuff. This is their mentality, typically. You'll know who I'm talking about, these sorts of peeps, right? They're relying, right? Hardware spares, they got loads of that, right? Do you know what? I had this prepper I was doing a consultation session with, and he has a big channel, and it wasn't really a consultation session, but it ended up being one. And he said to me, he goes, do you know what? I've got enough gear to go for 18 months, right? And I asked him, and he's a fisherman, and I asked him, well, you know, when you say 18 months, what are you talking about here? And when you work out, I said to him, how many times, in fact, there's someone else I just remembered I had a similar conversation with about fishing, right? And you say, well, how many fish do you need to feed your family a day? And they say like 3. It's like, right, so you need 3 fish a day. Well, how many hooks and bait lines on average do you need to get a fish? And they're like, oh, usually about 3 hooks, 3 casts, and sometimes you lose your stuff, you know, 3 hooks per fish, and you need 3 fish. That's 9 hooks a day. So you think to yourself, 18 months, 9 hooks a day, yeah? 18 months, yeah? Times 30 gives you days, times 24 gives you the hours, gives you, sorry, the days, right? You're talking some epic levels of hooks you're going to need, yeah? Like super, what do you call it, hooks you're going to need in order for you to... So you're going to need about 4,800 hooks to be able to survive. Right, this thing adds up. And so, yeah. But security and protection, and this is a different thing. There's a guy who was talking about all the weapons he's got, and he had, every one of them had dot, you know, the dot scopes, red dot. Out of all the preps he had everything in the world, but you know what he didn't have? He didn't have any spare 2032 or 2025 cells. Button cells, like the things that go in your scopes, right? So you need to be making sure. And the other thing is the commandos usually come unstuck because they're just getting into gnarly shit all the time. This is not, I'm sorry to tell you, this is not 18 months worth of preps, right? Or sorry, this is not 24 months of preps. This is like literally, what is that? 1 week of preps, because look at the medical supplies. They don't care about that. So this is the illustration. Don't forget, the commando is the person who's going to be taking the food from the kitchen queen. Yeah? So the commando, you'll notice, the commando doesn't actually need to worry about food. This is why his food storage is so shitty, because he doesn't care. The commando's planning to take all of his food, get all of his food from the kitchen queen, because there's no security or protection. Are you getting the picture? Right? So then you've got the animal lover, right? And these are people, unfortunately, who consider things that their pets need more than they do themselves, right? I've seen this happen quite a lot. And they go, oh, the pet food they could possibly want. And it's almost like themselves care less than their pets. So you've got to be strategic about that, yeah? Don't get sucked into it. And you've got to be prepping incrementally across the board, so even Stevens. You've got the gadget geek here, look. The gadget geek usually actually do quite well, to be honest, but they're just not into the hunting and growing. They're just not into the medical supplies. They're really into the hardware and spares, the security, protection, the energy, the fuel. That's where they excel. The food storage, you know, it's not tech. It's not gadgets. They're not as passionate about it, but they got a bunch because, you know, why not? And then the water and filtration. So this is a classic gadget geek. It's pretty good, but you don't have contingencies. If your main preps don't work, you might end up wishing you'd had more medical supplies and hunting and growing in case all of your food storage gets taken, who knows, or spoiled, who knows. You may be forced to resort to hunting and growing. So this is where the gadget geek is going to come unstuck. And then we've got, finally, this is it, only investing in exciting things and ignoring critical, boring stuff, right? Like hunting and growing. And this is what I'm saying. I'm not a passionate grower, right? But I've got microgreens set up for when it needs to be rocking, right? With like a few buckets of seeds, right? And, you know, the core stuff that you use as like soil. And then, of course, you've got a Sigma prepper. And this is the whole point of what I try to impart on those of you that follow this channel is you got to be across the board. Yeah, you need to be like this is the whole point why Sigmas do really well as preppers, because they're already self-sufficient. They're already really good at learning new skills and learning new things to become better all the time. They don't want to rely on everyone else all the time. They don't want to have a team of people to boss about that they have to try and rely on for their own life. Yeah, they're generally people who are very competent and very driven in terms of being self-sustaining, self-sufficient, and highly skilled. So this is reflected in the fact that you are multidisciplined and you are multifaceted in the way that you're approaching preparedness, rather than just going out there and spending all this money on a whole 18 months worth of tin food, but no way to protect it, no energy to keep the lights on, and not even a spare battery to go in your red dot scope to even protect yourself. Don't be one of those prepper profiles. Which one are you? So it felt relevant to give you a bit of a rundown on that, because that is where people come unstuck, is when you are going out there looking at the ways to prepare. There doesn't seem to be a lot of strategy in it, and they just sort of run off with like some channel that just tell them to go and buy like food. So wildlife hunted, hospitals are now closed, right? This is day 14. Car gas empty, your DT power's gone because your gas tank's empty, so you can't be charging your stuff from your cigarette car lighter socket anymore. Half a gallon per hour with your car on idle consumed. You will be way before day 14, even if you're being conservative. But there's ways around that. You can get those little plug-in crocodile clip solar panels you can leave on the car roof just to keep your battery topped up while you're not using it to charge your smart devices or whatever. Allotments and gardens raided. Seen this quite a lot as well when I've studied this over the years. Allotments actually get raided much sooner than people think, way before day 14, but if they haven't been by now, they're all gone, done. Rubbish piling up, even worse now, which is leading to disease. Sanitation issues, don't forget, because your toilets were ceasing to flush. Sewage stopped like ages ago, days ago. What was it, day 4 or something? Sewage stopped going down. So what do you think people have been doing since then? It hasn't been going to the toilet in their own WCs in their own houses, just for a clue. Right, and that attracts disease, that attracts rats and all sorts of nasty shit going on, and mosquitoes and rodents and wildlife. Yeah, death and destruction widespread. It's going to be super miserable. People are going to be super panicked. Yeah, super done with. You're going to find people super done with being alive, believe me. They just want to give up. They want to give up. And when humans give up on life, they do some very, very, very strange things. Don't even look into it. Don't even study it, because it's very, very scary stuff when you think, I just don't want to see that. Yeah, when humans are ready to give up, when they've endured several weeks of this nasty stuff and they've seen what they've seen and they've done what they've done. Cheers, Wolfpack. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so very much for our super chatterers, helping to keep things rocking. I really do appreciate you. So yeah, it's not good. Neighbours and family come knocking. Yeah, I mean, they're just desperate now, and you've got to decide how you're going to approach that. Are you going to turn them away empty-handed? Are you going to give them anything you've got? Are you going to de-escalate? Are you going to escalate? Right? I'm going to be doing a whole show about that. It's going to be super, super important. So here's your considerations as a reminder of what we looked at today in terms of your climate and environment being different. Some people are going to need to have power for aircon. Some people are going to need to have wood for their wood burning stoves for the winter time. So depending on your climate, the way that you prepare is going to be different, right? Your local laws and restrictions, never forget that. Certain things some countries can do and buy, and there's other things that other countries and things can't buy. So bear that in mind. Local culture crime levels are going to be a big predictor of what you need to spend on security and protection versus what you need to spend on other bits and pieces, right? So rural off-grid cabin versus city apartment, you have to consider a complete night and day experience If you do have people that live in more of a suburban, rural area, friends, family, aunties, uncles, anything like that, I would make that your first plan to bug out, because bug out doesn't necessarily mean into the woods. It could just be, you know, out of the city to a friend or family's place. Getting there is going to be your problem, navigating closed roads, gnarled up traffic, and gangs trying to pull people over like they did in Venezuela and places like that, robbing people as they drove up the road. Your property size, your garden, your available space is always going to have an effect as well. There are storage solutions, as I've shown you as part of this video today, with things like the bob that goes in the bath, water butts in the garden, very effective means to store water. Your family size, your dependents, don't forget about your pets. You know, we love our pets here on the Single Prepper channel. Family size, dependents, don't forget when it comes to things like young ones in there with family size, your sterilizers, your baby formula, the changes of clothes that you're going to need without being able to wash them. Consider these things as well. You've got health needs are going to be different for different people. Disabilities, where people aren't going to be quite as mobile as others, as was made comments in the live chat there about some people can walk a fair distance and carry what they need, and other people, they ain't going anywhere. So your provisions need to include those, along with the disabilities that will give you certain specific requirements for medication that others don't, that may require for them to be refrigerated. You'll need to adopt further preparedness costs and considerations for things like keeping your medicine safe. You can get small little fridges and you can run those for some time as a backup with an off-grid simple solar system. So it's all doable stuff. It is all doable. Budget, financial means, I appreciate tricky times right now, especially what's coming in America and the rest of the world, with this big thing we got going on with a trade war right now, and how that's going to pan out. Will be more about that I'll be doing in shows to come. Definitely don't miss those. So yeah, personal survival and self-defense knowledge will make a difference. So many things that can have an effect on the outcome. So bear that in mind. But please hit the like button if you've learned something or feel my efforts will help others to learn. Do share on your social media, because it would be lovely to have some new peeps come and visit Sigma Prepper and stick around for future shows. So why should we, this is what we've looked at today then, why we should prepare the unique individual considerations for each of you living in different situations, different countries and cultures. Protecting devices from a surge, we looked at that as the first steps to do on the minute it happens, with turning the BCD fuse box off, and then just leaving one device like just a simple 10-watt lamp plugged in and turned on, so that when the power does come back on, you'll know, and you'll know if there was a surge, it's only going to wipe out a small little lamp. Pop. Rather than your fridge, your freezer, and everything else was plugged into the mains at the time. So yes, don't forget to employ the means to maintain the life of your batteries on your smart devices for those first 2 days. Try and have a specific dedicated flashlight rather than using your mobile phone flashlight. Remember about turning off the GPS, putting it into silent mode, airplane mode, turning off the GPS, the Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi, to conserve the battery as long as possible, and turn down the screen brightness. We looked as well about what we can do with a fridge in terms of putting extra containers of water in there, bottles of water in the fridge. Don't fill them right out. You need to allow for expansion, contraction. Check out Random Warrior. 1 second after is a good book. Thanks everyone. 1 second after is a good book to read. Thank you so much, Random Warrior, for that call out. I really appreciate you, and check out his super duper super chat. You're such a superstar, man. Happy belated 3rd birthday gift. I watched the rerun. Hope didn't get put on all step of this in live stream. What an absolute top dude. Thank you so very much. And yes, for those that missed it, my 3rd anniversary of Sigma Prepper. Been going 3 years now. It's been a struggle. 1 second after is a good book to read. So thank you so very much. Do you know, on our Discord server, there is an entire section dedicated to the... So if you're not a member of Discord server already, you know, it's free to join. I spent so long building this place, but links in the description below if you'd like to become a member. It's completely free. But I do announcements. This is the video watching now. I do announcements as well, because YouTube doesn't like people finding this channel. So at least you know But here, I wanted to show you the main hangout is, you know, where it's all going on. We talk about stuff. You've got animal lovers if you'd like to share what you got going on with your pets and stuff. We like to get to know each other's pets and things. We're all animal lovers here, so thank you to those that share with that. We've got memes, we've got quotes, but here you've got SHGF themed movies. Now, what I'm thinking actually, Random Warriors, what I need in here is SHGF themed books. Let me know your thoughts, everyone. Yeah? So we could do with having, as well as the SHGF themed movies, I'll add one in here for books, and then when you see it in there, Random Warrior, because I'm pretty sure you're a member on Discord, aren't you? So you can go and lob it in there, and then you make it easy for people to find where they can grab it. And I do encourage people to recommend their books and movies that they see, that they feel inspired by, or they've learned from, that could help others to piece some of this together with real life experiences and so on. And Don't Go Urban Hunting in Homerton as well. Is that a film or a book or something? Is it, Amphi? But yeah, nice foldable sheets from Random Warrior. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate you appreciating me. Funky's Barrett in the house as well. Great to see you. Hi Kazo. I know I said hello to you earlier, but I'm saying hello to you again. Yorkshire Puds as well is with us. So we've been through quite a lot today. Increasing longevity of fridge. We looked at obviously the analysis of incremental failures, so you can flow those into your equations. Multiple examples of escalations, and the speed at which society breaks down. A lot of people are surprised by, but it's just a reality of how learned dependency plays out, right? When you're so dependent on these systems, as we've been forced to become over the years and chosen to become over the years, ultimately when that's taken away, you know. So in the debrief then, these were the objectives, weren't it? Gain better understanding of the number and seriousness of threats associated with a complete grid down scenario. I hope we've achieved that today. Help to guide your blackout preparations, so more effectively based on newly discovered threats. So hopefully there's been some things in there that you hadn't considered, that you'll bear in mind if you're ever in this situation like they are in Spain and Portugal right now today. So ensure we are getting the most survival juice out of our prepping squeeze. I talked about that when it came to the prepping profiles, what I described to you about how, you know, don't just go off spending like $1,000 on food. You need to be incrementally, try and aim for a week first of stuff. You don't need food if you want to survive a week. You can survive 3 weeks without food. Forget food for your first initial 7-day prep plan, right? You got to think logically. This is about strategic approach to preparedness is what we specialize in here. Yeah, not just like bumbling along, spending thousands on things you don't need. And not having the things that you really do that are going to keep you alive. Because it's not just food, right? So that was a grid down scenario, a disaster timeline by yours truly, Sigma Prepper, Drew Law. You know how we do. I hope you've understood everything I've been going on about and been able to bear with my how I do these things. It's the only way I know how to do. I like to do them live. It makes it far more interactive with you guys. Get to talk about it as we're going and chime in. And of course, today we've had some supporters as well. Thank you, Debbie, for your super chat earlier. I really appreciate you, my lovely. So lovely to see you in chat. We're way overdue in a catch up, by the way, Debbie. I need to make sure your hip's all right and things at work are all good. So we're well overdue. I'm just making sure everything's okay. Here we go. Yeah, it's crashing down quite a lot, but yeah, it's slowing down. So let's get back to base camp then, and boom. No idea. I'm assuming you enjoyed it and everything, and I just felt like it was important to go through today in light of what we've got going on out there with the power outage in Spain and Portugal. And I really feel for these people because I know what they're going through, and particularly with it being a hot day today. So I'm super. Check it out. Look, it's nice to finish with a meme. Oh, Putin there pulling the plug out. Look, classic. Love it. Oh dear, thank you so much everyone. I'll be back tomorrow as usual. So I really appreciate all of your kind comments as well. Excellent presentation. Thank you, Libestella. Lovely to see you. I didn't see you in there earlier on. I'd rather hunt human than animal for food. Yeah, that's another film to go in there. What is it? Alive, you know, the one where they crash in the plane in the snow and they end up having to eat the pilot or whatever it is. Let me know if you've seen that. Don't let me forget as well, I'll set up the new room in the Discord server. Don't forget links for that below, as well as the Wolfpack report, free to join, community newsletter going out every month. First one's coming out of that very soon, so get yourself with the onboarding email, because in that welcome email, don't forget you also get your completely free 42-page winter prepping guide by yours truly. And of course, everyone in the Southern Hemisphere now is just about coming to winter, so it's perfect timing. But thank you to each and every one of you. I've really enjoyed spending this time with you. I hope you've gained something from it. I always do, because I love seeing you guys. Please hit the like button if you haven't done already. I've been Drew, the Single Prepper. You've been such a wonderful lot. Oh, you're so gorgeous. Love, peace, and progress. To the back.
Reject the herd, prepare the pack. Click the like button, it's as easy as that. Check the description for the links you need. Follow my socials, subscribe to my feed. From a single lone woman to a family of 5. Learn from Sigma Prepper and see how you can thrive. We understand the risks that tomorrow could bring. We adapt and survive, it's a Wolfpack thing. Reject the herd, prepare the pack. Click the like button, it's as easy as that. Check the description for the links you need. Follow my socials, subscribe to my feed.